Welcome to SteeleWatching, which is a podcast for Remington Seal fans. My name is Sara, and I am too old for this.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I just feel like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, you know? Or no, Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. Just too old for this.
I never seen that, so I can't address that. I can't speak to that. But yeah, you know what? I'm Eric, and I have no clue what's going on.
That sounds about right, actually. It's a good setup for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Well, and we are going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 8, Puzzled Steele, which first aired on November 27th, 1984, and was written by Jeff Stop That Carrot Malvoin and directed by Don Weiss. Which we've had a few episodes that have been written by Jeff at this point. So,
and the next one coming up is also.
Oh, is it? I didn't realize that.
Cast and Steele, yes.
Oh, so we're starting to get a pattern here of his writing style, which is kind of interesting. And we've had a few episodes also directed by Don Weiss, so
yes,
kind of neat to see the
Quite a
repeat.
Few.
Yeah. So I went with the TV guide synopsis, but before I get into that, I just wanted to comment on air order again, because we talked about this at the beginning of the season, how the air dates feel somewhat arbitrary and in some cases don't really work, and how there was a suggested alternate airing list. And I was having a look through that suggested alternate airing list, and the alternate list suggested that this episode should be back-to-back with Maltese Steel. And that kind of made sense to me because they just appear in Malta. Like at the beginning, they're just kind of there. And we get the impression they're on a case, but obviously we'll get to that whole situation. But I don't know. I think it would have made more sense if they were in Malta for the chasing that body down and trying to figure out what was going on there, and then they came across another case and just opted not to go back right away. But either way, it doesn't really make a big difference. It's still another Europe episode. So
yeah, well, when you've got all these episodes that take place in Europe, obviously not one specific location in Europe, but multiple locations.
Yeah.
For various episodes, there is, even if you create a scenario to explain it, somewhere in the back of your mind, you still connect them.
Yeah, exactly.
Subconsciously.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what? They're just trying to gather frequent flyer miles, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This makes sense. You know in the back of your head that, okay, they were all filmed together, so it makes sense that they should have been sequenced together. And yeah, you can kind of create a backstory to explain it all, but yeah, there's still that little nagging suspicion that, no, this isn't right.
And I mean, Malta, as beautiful as it is not a terribly common destination. So it seems like, in terms of where people typically choose to vacation if they're going to Europe, it's usually Paris or, Britain or Spain or some of the... So it just feels a little bit extra odd that they end up in Malta twice in the same season for different cases or different reasons.
Right.
Yeah, so I just thought it would have been but I guess maybe they were trying to, as you said, spread out the wealth, so to speak, because suddenly they've got this immense budget for travel for this season. And yeah, we're just going all over the place here. So, exactly. So anyway, that was my thought process on just the air date stuff that we've been kind of going over. The TV guide synopsis for this episode reads, what begins as a harmless competition between Laura and Steele to find a missing journalist becomes a deadly game of double identities. So kind of vague, but it does the job, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have... I was the good cop with pocket full. I might be a bad cop with this episode.
Oh, no.
So, yeah.
It's a role that you rarely play, so you probably aren't very good at it, but we'll let you try.
I think I'm probably more forgiving than you are. And to be fair, I don't hate it. It's not on my list of episodes that I would go out of my way to avoid. It's just when you mentioned it last time we recorded as the next episode, I couldn't remember it. I had to go back and look it up.
It's not a good sign.
Well, no, that's the thing. Like, it's not necessarily bad. It's just kind of forgettable because we've seen, and I'll get into more specifically some of the issues I have with it, but we've kind of seen this plot already. So, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, that's kind of my overall thoughts, but we'll dig in as we go. So we open once again on the island of Malta. And we've got a red versus blue situation here for anyone who gets the reference, the little cartoon of the two spies, red versus blue. In this case,
black spy, white spy.
We had red versus blue as well. It was the same idea.
Okay, so. I'm thinking, what was it? Mad Magazine? Spy versus spy?
Yeah, this was a cartoon that we had. Like a little, yeah. Anyway. It's mainly just that there's a red car racing through the streets and it's being chased by a blue one. So, yeah. I was trying to make it. Yeah. So we get the camera zoom in and we see Steele and Laura. They're in the blue car. They're falling very far behind. Laura.
Can I jump back about a half a scene here?
Sure.
I
Do we
found
have
it interesting.
half a scene to jump back to?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Believe it or not.
Right.
Because before we get to the chase, we have an establishing shot.
Right.
And we have the titles, Puzzled Steele.
Yeah.
And behind that is a sign hanging from a building. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I did not.
Which, for somebody who has access to the information, production schedules and such, this might tell us how closely together this one was shot with the others, because the sign in the background reads, and I'm going to butcher this, Jum El Hadim, which is the local Maltese name for Workers' Day, which is in May 1st, May Day.
Oh, so this was November that they... Oh, sorry, it was aired in November, but I don't know when it was filmed.
Yeah, so this was shot around the 1st of May, presumably, because of that sign there establishing that.
Oh, okay.
So if we know if we know that, and we know what the dates of the other European episodes are, somebody might be able to put a timeline together. So I just throw that out there as just a little clue to somebody.
That's pretty eagle-eyed. That's impressive. I didn't notice that.
Hey, I finally got one.
There you go.
A background catch. I got one.
Yay, good for you. So yeah. Yeah, they're chasing the red car in the blue car. And like I said, falling very far behind. Laura urges Steele to have courage, but he tells her courage is not the issue. Horsepower is. He has it. They don't.
Now, I'm going to take some slight exception to that, if I'm reading this scene correctly. Now, first of all, they're not on a straight road. It's got curves, which means that it's as much, or at least significantly, driver's skill as it is horsepower. Okay, that's the first point. The second point is, if I'm reading the vehicles correctly, the first one, the car they're chasing, the red one, is a Triumph. Well, okay, powerful sports car, supposedly. Not really a big, powerful sports car. It's a pretty small car. What Steele and Laura are in, the blue one, appears to be, and I can't tell 100% certainly, but it appears to be a Mini. Now, again, Mini, small car, not a huge horsepower engine, but the Mini had a reputation on racing tracks. In fact, it had such a reputation that officials, and I don't remember what the race type it was. It wasn't Le Mans or something like that, but it was some through the streets type European racing. The Mini had such a fearsome reputation that race organization officials actually took to creating rules designed to disqualify that vehicle on the grounds that their headlights didn't meet some standard. I mean, that's how. Because there were races where the minis actually took, if I'm remembering this correctly, and I can get my mouth to work, I believe there was at least one race where minis took first, second, and third place. Even though they didn't have large, powerful engines, because of the amount of horsepower they had compared to the amount of weight they had.
Yeah,
they
were
are
small,
powerful.
Car. Makes sense.
So, yeah, I think Steele's making an excuse for his driving. But anyway.
Yeah. It would not surprise me if that were the case, because, I mean, when you think about it, most of the time when they're chasing somebody, they're getting Fred to do the work. Or
Laura.
The Fred of the day. Or Laura.
Fred of the day.
Yeah, who teaches the road a lesson when she drives the rabbit.
That's right.
And the Auburn, as gorgeous as it is, I think we talked about the speeds it can get up to. It's not as fast as modern cars, right? So, yeah, he's maybe not as good at catching up to some of the other cars. But hey, yeah, horsepower. We'll go with that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, he's falling behind. The man driving the red car has a scar on his face, so he's kind of distinctive looking. He pulls up to a gate, gets out. Laura sees it, says that he just ran out of road. They hop out of the car and sort of chase him into a crowd. And they end up in this village where Laura sort of abruptly stops. Steele is frantic. He says he's getting away, but Laura is puzzled. See what I did there? Pause for effect. Yeah, okay.
Leaves the dad jokes to a dad.
Yeah. She tells the men that they are... Couldn't help myself. She tells She tells him that the man they are chasing is English and questions why he was driving on the right side of the road, or the wrong side of the road, depending on how you want to look at it. Steele doesn't really...
The incorrect side of the road for the local... Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, well, when you think about it, if you drive on the same side of the road that you drive on in North America, in England, you're going to die. So over there, that's the wrong side of the road. It's whatever side everyone else is on is, the right side. But either way, it's funny that she would notice this and not Steele, considering where he's from. But
That's true. Yeah. Actually.
He doesn't really care about the details. He says they'll ask him when they catch him. But she is not to be deterred. She says that she's had a funny feeling about the case ever since they left L.A. She insists, I guess if that's part of the script, now that I think about it, they couldn't have put them back to back, but
well, then again, depending on what they knew at the time that they were filming them, if they knew that they were going to be shown out of sequence, they might have actually... We don't have an original script on this, so we don't know.
Yeah, no, I looked for it, but
they could have shot alternate versions of certain scenes. And in fact, they may have done that on several of these European episodes, shot alternate versions, knowing that the network might change the airing order. And so they did cover shots that gave them alternatives.
That's true.
So
she says she's had a funny feeling about the case ever since they left L.A., insists it's been too easy, citing the gambler on Crete, the bartender on Mykonos. It doesn't fit in somehow. Steele is getting real frustrated because he says they've been tracking this guy for 4 days across the Mediterranean. He does not want to stop and think. Laura, on the other hand, says, "Give me a minute." And Steele gets frustrated. He puts his fist through the wall of a nearby house.
Okay, I got an issue.
I was about to... You go ahead, because I have it in my notes. I'm assuming it's the same issue, so you take it away.
Well, I don't know if it is or not, but okay, so it's a facade, obviously.
Yes.
But from what we can see, that siding appears to be about like a quarter of an inch thick.
Right.
Even if it's old siding, really weathered and somewhat decayed, you're going to hurt your hand before you put your fist through it. I would think. I've never tried it. I don't intend to, but just something about that just doesn't seem right.
Well, this is your typical TV.
Oh, sure.
TV/movie. Like, we see this all the time with TV and movies, right? They'll put their fist or their something through it, or a glass like a window or something. How many times do people go through a window and come out with no cuts?
Yeah.
That always baffles me. I'm like, you would be torn all to shreds because that's glass.
Yeah.
But, or,
Sharpie.
yeah, exactly. But this actually wasn't my issue with it so much as the fact that how often do we see him get annoyed and put his fist through a wall? It's not real.
I don't think we have up till now, have we?
No, that's my point. It feels like it was necessary for the script, but it doesn't really feel that in character. I mean, yeah, we talked a little bit about how season 2 Steele was a little more prone to be aggressive and a little more eager to violence, but we haven't seen as much of that so far in season 3. They've kind of scaled him back a bit. He's back to being sort of at least somewhat even-keeled, similar to what he was in season 1. They've kind of balanced it out a bit. This is the first we've gotten a glimpse of that, and we don't usually see him punching walls when he gets mad. That feels oddly, weirdly aggressive in a way that we have, because they argue all the time over what tack to take on a case. And what, she's not moving fast enough, so he puts his fist through a wall. It just feels like they needed a way to show it was a facade, and that was all they could do. It would have made more sense if he had maybe just put his hand on the thing and it fell over.
Yeah, or if it was, like one of the boards was loose and he banged up against it or something like that.
Like an
and
annoyed...
it fell, and then they saw ours. Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels really like, I don't know. It didn't feel in character. So I agree with you about it hurting the hand as well, because he doesn't even seem to notice it. He just puts his fist through the wall and he's like, oh, look, so yeah, that doesn't. And instead of seeing the interior of a building, they see a body of water because it's just like you said, just siding. Laura taps on the wall. She realizes it's hollow. And then they notice that all the people are gone. The entire village is fake. So Steele looks on a map and he confirms that it's not actually there. So
is this the village from The Prisoner, maybe?
Yeah, could be.
Ooh,
or that
6.
or that weird M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village. Did you ever see that one?
No.
It's actually not a bad movie. It's one of those things where if you watch M. Night Shyamalan's movies and you don't really think too hard about the twist, they can be entertaining. In this case, you get this village that seems like it's from the 1800s, and then you find out at the end, spoiler alert, anyone who hasn't seen The Village, it did come out like 20 years ago though, so I think I'm okay here. You find out that they're not really in the 1800s. Somebody has put them there, and they think they are, but there's really a modern world all around them. They don't. It's like the Truman Show. So yeah, so it's similar. Yeah, the village is fake.
Yeah, I've seen the original version of The Prisoner with Patrick McGowan, and that was a typically weird show of that era from British TV.
It was weird.
It was great, and it was actually a kind of a sequel / extension to a show that he did called Danger Man, I think it was. I think that was the one it was an extension of, where he was a secret agent, and then in The Prisoner, he's a secret agent who has quit.
Yeah.
And then they take him to this village because nobody really knows why they took him to this village. It could be good guys to make sure he doesn't divulge secrets. It could be bad guys trying to get him to divulge secrets. It's just a really weird show, but it's kind of fun and neat, psychotic sort of way.
I haven't seen the whole thing, but I have seen a few episodes of it because I remember one of my courses that I took in university was called Popular Narrative. And it was an English course technically, but we read comic books, we read spy novels, we watched cult television and like explored all different types of narratives. And one of the classes we watched an episode of The Prisoner. So yeah.
Anyway,
it's pretty good.
Back to what we're supposed to be doing here.
So yeah, Laura declares they aren't in Kansas anymore, and Steele delivers the citation for The Wizard of Oz. All of a sudden, they hear clapping. A wall rolls away to reveal an audience sitting there. I would like to know, and maybe I didn't look too closely on this, but they roll a wall away, and there's like people sitting on bleachers or whatever. Like, how are they watching them. There was a wall. And it couldn't have had a window because then they would have seen the audience watching them. So were they just sitting behind the wall listening?
Yeah, I guess, it's
so
like,
that
move that
weird.
bus, move that bus. They can't see, but they know that Laura and Steele are out there. And so, I don't
How
know.
did they hire the studio audience for that one? Like, what was the notice that went out? You're going to sit behind a wall and listen to a bunch. I don't know. It just feels kind of odd. Anyway, so
I guess this is probably the same level of role that they got that they advertised for. We need a dead body.
Dead body
We're
in
going
a
to stuff you in a
bathtub.
barrel. We're going to.
Yeah, exactly. So they roll the wall back. We've got this audience clapping, and it includes it's like This Is Your Life, right? Or The Wizard of Oz, because you've got you were there, and you were there. We've got the bartender on Mykonos, the gambler on Crete. Oh, I guess that's how they got them. They're all the cast, the people that have been, along with other faces, right? A bunch of just everyone that they've encountered. An expensively dressed man in a white suit congratulates them and says that he had hoped the game would last a bit longer, but that he should have known better than to hire a Yank. Technically, he didn't. I'm not really sure.
That's true. That's true.
A very confusing sentence because, yes, Steele is in the States, but he's clearly British.
Maybe he realizes that Laura is the brains of the operation.
Well, no, he can't. I mean, first of all, that's not even Wainwright, as we find out later on. But
well, right. But I mean,
even the Morand or whatever, the colonel, when he was evaluating them for this, sort of dismissed her as being too argumentative, right? So I guess because they're based out of the States, he assumes he's American, but yeah. And he could be. He could have citizenship. It's not out of the realm of possibility for somebody, because immigrants immigrate to countries all the time and keep their accents. But
yeah, but you would still, in the context of this, you would still probably refer to Steele as British or Irish rather than American.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you listen to him; it's obvious he's not. Yeah, he's not an American. Anyway, yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so he's. It felt like that line should be, I should have known better than to hire Remington Steele as opposed to hire a Yank. Yeah. I'm not really sure what having an American would make a difference between how long the game lasts. Is he trying to say that, and no offense to Americans listening, is he trying to say that you guys are the smartest people on the planet? Because
of course.
I got to say, I mean, there's a lot of very intelligent Americans, but I've also met some not so.
Go ahead and say it. Some really dumb ones.
Well, I mean, that happens in every country. That's all I'm saying. Like it I don't think anyone's ever sat down and gone, well, if we're going to rank intelligence, I don't know. It's an odd statement. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking before I get myself into further trouble.
That's right.
He tells Harold to come out, and the man they were chasing emerges from behind the audience. He tells them his wig was giving him a headache. So obviously he's in a costume of some sort. And he says this in an American accent. And he removes the scar as well as the wig. The man in the white suit tells him introductions are in order and says his name is G.W. Wainwright, which, of course, we find out later is not the case. But we're going to go with that for now because it made my notes very confusing to try to go back and switch it all around. So
yes.
For now, until the reveal happens, this is Mr. Wainwright. For all intents and purposes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we get a scene switch. Aboard Wainwright's yacht, Laura is not impressed. She is telling him that she doesn't care if he is the wealthiest man in England, to which he corrects her and says, top 20. She says it doesn't give him the right to manipulate people like that. I don't know. If someone was paying me incredibly well to solve puzzles for them, why not? Like, I don't,
Well, Laura's got this sense of propriety that she doesn't like playing when there's work to be done.
True.
And
her ethics are questionable at best, though. So
well, I'm not disagreeing with that, okay. But she does, in certain areas, in certain ways, she does have ethics. Yes.
When they suit her, yes. I agree. Yes. But I do agree that she does have this
Floating
version.
sense of ethics.
Yeah, a version. There's a good T-shirt slogan: floating sense of ethics. I still think SteeleWatching, the podcast that gets stuff done, we should do that. But yeah, so he argues that she's blowing it out of proportion and insists that he hasn't done anything nefarious. Mildred's there as well. He tells her that all he's done is give her $10,000 in advance to come and play in one of the wealthiest corners of the world. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
Laura, incensed at the use of the word play. She's not impressed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if she thought of it as like the world's largest escape room.
That's still play.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's weird because this is the kind of play you'd think she'd like.
Well, it could also just be, I think she makes reference to it at some point too, being led to believe that it was an important case.
Yeah, I do get
where there might be some danger being presented to somebody, and they're there to try and prevent it.
Yeah.
And the false pretenses of it.
That's fair.
So.
And Steele even that's Steele's next line. He jumps in and says that she's angry because they thought they were up against the clock in order to save his nephew's life.
Mm-hmm.
So I do understand that, because then you feel like somebody's life is hanging in the balance, only to find out nothing is.
It was
actually,
all fake.
Yeah. So Wainwright admits the kidnapping plot was a bit melodramatic, but he had to make it serious, otherwise there wouldn't be any sport in it. This reminds me of a short story that I've taught to my students a few times, and I don't know if anybody's ever read this, but I believe the short story is called The Most Dangerous Game. Have you ever read this? I think it was made into a movie, actually. I haven't watched the film, but the gist of the story is, and the story is a bit darker than what this is, but the gist of the story is that there's a man on a boat, or two men on a boat actually, and they're on their way to some far-flung country to hunt for sport. And they pass this island that his friend tells him is a really dangerous island. People go there, they don't come back. And somehow he accidentally falls off the ship. I don't remember how that happens, but he ends up on this island that supposedly nobody comes back from.
Accidentally?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I mean, like somebody maybe helped him accidentally?
Yeah, it could be, but I'm trying to remember exactly how it works. But like, he wakes up on this island and he finds this giant mansion. There's nobody for miles, and he eventually finds this mansion, and inside the mansion there's a Russian ex-military man who basically says, oh, finally somebody who's civilized, and they bond over the biggest game that they've ever hunted for. And it eventually is revealed that the Russian that has this giant mansion actually lures people in and basically forces them to play his game, which is hunting. He hunts them down. He says, you've got 3 days to escape or I kill you. That's the game. And so it turns into this cat and mouse thing, but it definitely kind of felt a little bit like that game, mm-hmm. where he argues that it's immoral. You can't hunt people. And he says, well, I've gotten tired of hunting game. There's no sport in it. People are cunning. People can think. People have strategy. Animals don't. So in his mind, he's just taking it to the next level. Whereas in the protagonist's mind, he's doing something horrifically unethical. And it kind of connected that to this episode, because to him, it's better sport. It doesn't make for good sport if they don't have stakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this doesn't make Laura feel better.
Yeah, really.
At all. And he insists that sport is where they find it. He says he thought it would be better to pit his wits against a world-famous detective than to breed more horses or go on any more interminable safaris.
Yeah.
Oh, to have his problems. I mean, I realize this is not actually Wainwright, but like...
Yeah.
Still,
to have those problems would be nice, yes.
Smallest violin in the world, planned just for you, my dude. Like... Wow. Yeah. Mildred interrupts them. And because she's eating. She's sitting there. She's got a little snack in front of her. She says she's
chowing down.
Trying to dissolve some of the tension too, I think. And she says the mussels are to die for, declaring them ambrosia. I think that might be going a bit too far, but okay. And Wainwright says it was, and this is another reason why having these episodes be back, actually wouldn't make a difference because the Habsburg thing was not in Malta, but whatever, saying that it was Steele's work recovering the Habsburg dagger that suggested he was right for the job. and that he hasn't been disappointed. So Steele, obviously feeling flattered, tells him he doesn't approve of his methods, but his admiration is understandable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you're trying to convince somebody to do something that their natural inclination is to not do, buttering them up, complimenting them, praising them, building up their ego. Typical approach for that sort of thing. And
this is literally how you get Steele to do anything. You just the man is all ego, right? So
he's at least one other thing, but anyway.
Well, that's true. But
there's one other way to get him to do something. But
what's funny about it too is they always play on his perceived reputation. That's what they butter up, and that's that's the fakest thing about him, right? So
really,
it's funny that he always
and yet
always
he falls
works.
for it.
He's every time. Yeah. Laura, on the other hand, she's even more annoyed. She turns away. Wainwright notices she's still a bit touchy. Never call a woman touchy. If you want to live, if you want to breathe your next breath, two things you never do. One, call a woman touchy. Two, tell her to calm down.
Well, that doesn't help anybody.
It does. Well, that's true. In the history of the universe, there has been no case where somebody has said, calm down, and the other person's gone, you know what, you're right, I should calm down. It just doesn't happen.
Well, my take on the phrase calm down is I'm going to do something that I need to justify later. And so by telling you to calm down, I can therefore later say they were hysterical. They were out of control. They were, whatever.
Setting up the alibi.
Yeah.
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, so he calls Laura back and he tells her that he did prepare another game in this case. And I get why she doesn't want to play a second time, but maybe if they had told her ahead of time and they didn't have a big caseload, hey, I'll give you $10,000, because something like that could have been good publicity. And I, assuming this was all real, we know it's not, but if it was, it could be good publicity to have the Remington Steele Agency do a series of games designed to test their skill.
Well, it could be, or it could come off as flaky, they're not real detectives. They just do it for games and for money. It could actually sully their reputation. So
I don't know.
I think it could go either way, depending on how the scenarios were set up, how it was handled, how it was publicized. If you did get out in front of it and said, well, we're doing this as a test, it's kind of like practicing, when you're a tennis player, you go out and you practice tennis before you play the real games. And this is what we were doing. We're practicing. If you sold it that way, it might go over okay. But I think a lot of people would just look at it as that's a frivolous exercise done strictly for the money. And I can't take you seriously as detectives after that.
I don't know. So. You do this in the year 2002. It's a reality show.
You mean an reality show?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Either way, he tells Laura he did prepare another game in case they solve the first one too quickly. He offers her another $10,000 if they want to tackle it. Laura says absolutely not, and he ups it to $20,000. He insists he didn't hear her, and Steele intervenes. They're already in Malta, okay? And again, assuming this was an actual game and not that they're being tricked. Is she insane?
I think her pride, in addition to her sense of propriety and ethics, being offended, I think her pride is a little bit offended because she says, in just a minute or so, I refuse to become that man's plaything. I think she feels that it's demeaning to her personally. Yeah. And, if you feel that somebody is demeaning you, even though there might be some benefit to doing something, you're just going to set your jaw and say, I'm not going to do it. I don't care, what kind of money is in it for me or whatever the benefit is. I'm not going to do it simply because I don't like you.
Yeah, well, this is definitely a pride thing, and I get it. I just think, as Steele argues, $20,000 can buy a lot of paper clips. Like they're already there. It would be different if they were in LA and this guy was trying to. They're there already.
Okay, here's a counter argument. They're supposedly one of the premier detective agencies in at least Southern California, perhaps the U.S., possibly the world. I don't know. Do you think that they couldn't make $20,000 on a legitimate case? And if that's the case, then why would they waste their time playing to make $20,000 when they could be doing something genuine, legitimate, and productive for $20,000?
Well, because a lot of their legitimate cases end up with them getting shot at.
Well,
and I guess even in this case, because it is not a legitimate case. As long as they don't kiss, I suppose they're safe.
as long as they don't kiss, they're fine. Yeah.
But I don't know. I get what you're saying, and you're not wrong. It just feels kind of silly that she's turning down $20,000 when they're already in Malta and they have nothing better to do.
Enough for that horse.
Yeah. So yeah, he offers her. He says $20,000 can buy an awful lot of paper clips, and as you pointed out, she says it's the principle of the thing, and she refuses to become that man's plaything, and the agency can't be bought. Pretty sure it can be. So just
rented cheap though.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. A business can always be bought, and they are. I mean, they are a business. They can choose to refuse business, but anytime that there's a transaction, that's anyway. Not really. Just a technicality.
Yeah.
But as you said, Steele suggests maybe it could be rented. So he's on board. He wants $20,000.
Yeah. He's always about the dollars.
Yeah. Wainwright says to Mildred that he hopes he hasn't caused a rift. Mildred, unperturbed, says they always work things out beautifully. Don't know if that's true, but sure.
Well, when they're done, there's no dead bodies laying around.
That's true.
So.
Laura insists this is outrageous, while Steele argues that balmy skies, azure waves, and $20,000 sounds pretty good. Laura argues that playing games is not their job. Steele says, "I see," and Laura senses a tone. When she questions him on it, he accuses her of being reluctant to play a tone. He accuses her of being reluctant to play a little hooky. She insists that's ridiculous, but it's obvious he's struck a nerve. Okay, this is where I'm going to say we have seen this episode before. Steele crazy after all these years. We've seen it.
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah, you're true. You're correct. The competition between the two of them.
Yeah.
Well, it's been several episodes that's come up. Yeah.
I know. It just feels like they're retreading this ground because they did this already. They did the, and maybe that's part of the issue I have with this season is that it feels like they're rehashing these arguments without anything new to give us. We had that happen in Steele at It. They rehashed all of their issues, their arguments, etc. They put the Can agreement in effect. Now we're rehashing is he really a detective versus experience versus skill, instinct versus education. Like we've.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with you. I will play the advocate for the other side here, though, briefly. Whether I believe it or not, I'm not sure. But
you're the good cop.
I'm the good cop, yes.
You're the good cop for once. Yeah.
I'll say, how do I do that? Okay,
it doesn't come naturally to him.
Yes, I know. There's always been tension between the two of them with regard to his skills, his ability, who's in charge, who's the real detective. And if you want to say that we're going to follow real life as an example, just because you reach an impasse where everybody agrees to leave it be doesn't mean it stays there. It comes up again. Circumstances, attitudes, egos, woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, whatever. And these kinds of things do come back at times in various ways.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, you could make the argument that Yeah, they've reached an impasse in the past, but they didn't really actually ever settle the issues. They're always still there boiling underneath, and all it takes is, a match put to the kindling to reflare it back up again, or some fresh kindling, or a little bit of gas on the fire, whatever. Whatever kind of argument you want to use to describe it. So, yes, have we seen this before? Yeah. Is it unrealistic to say that it keeps cropping up, and so we see it in new forms, new variations? That's totally reasonable.
Yeah,
I understand what you're saying, though. I mean, it seems like we should have been there, done that, gotten over it. But hey, people don't get over things all the time, and they do keep bringing them back up, and they do keep rehashing the same arguments. So
no, I agree with you on that. But part of the reason why we like television versus real life is that real life is boring when stuff like this comes up over and over again. And I agree with you that narratively these things would come up in various different ways, but in order for it to be an entertaining narrative, we don't need it to be resolved, but we need to see something new at least.
It's episodic television. Nobody remembers what happened last season.
Well, true. A lot of this happened this season. They had that argument in SteeleWatching.
Nobody remembers what happened last week.
That's just you. I think that's just you having. Yeah.
No, that's. I don't remember what happened yesterday. So.
Yeah. I don't know. You're right. I don't know. I feel like
I win. I finally win an argument.
I feel like anytime we get these episodes where they spend the bulk of the episode in different places, unless it's something like the episode with Maury Singer, for example, that episode is fantastic. I love that episode. I'm blanking on the name at the moment, but that's a great episode. They spend a good chunk of it apart, but it's got enough quirky characters on both sides of it. It's got enough banter between Murphy and Laura, and then like that side plot that they had. That kept me entertained. This one, they're both working entirely on their own, although Steele's got Mildred with him. And aside from a few hijinks that they pull on each other, I don't know. I want to see the banter. It doesn't necessarily have to be a relationship plot, but it feels like something gets sucked out of the episode when they're not playing off each other.
Yeah, they are at their best when they are working together and bouncing off of each other's, walls and such as that. But I guess from the standpoint of the writers and the creators, they're trying to keep stirring the pot, mixing things up, not be doing the same thing over and over again, at least to the extent that you say, well, they did that last week, they did this, nothing's changing. So, and sometimes changing is just simply by stirring old issues up again. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not good at this good cop thing. I'm sorry.
No, you're making some good points. You are making good points. This is maybe
you just don't want to listen to them.
No, this is maybe just my reaction to the episode itself, that I've seen this, and because it might be as well because Steele Crazy after all these years was such a good episode that this one's not measuring up in the same way. Like if I want to watch an episode where they're at odds doing a contest trying to see who solves the case first, I'm going to watch that one because that one has a cast of really crazy characters and it's got all kinds of, it's just really fun. This one feels, I don't know, anemic. But again, that could just be my own perception of it. So anyway, Steele urges her to let her baser urges be free. She insists that she was raised to work, that she's happy working and she can't enjoy herself if she knows she should be doing something else. This is also not really true about her because we know from vintage Steele that she used to play hooky. She was a free spirit at one point. She has a work ethic. Yes, we do know that. That's established. But she's also kind of fine with having some fun. This has only been recent that she's kind of really nose to the grindstone. So,
but again, going back to human nature, what is it that we tend to do when we're in an argument? We want to win the argument, so we take something that is just, a little part of our personality and say, it's our entire personality.
Yeah.
That is how we are.
That's true.
Because all we want to do is win that argument.
Yeah, that is true. And she does double down on this. Wainwright, obviously trying to get his way, interrupts him and suggests a solution to their problem. He suggests finding an actual unsolved case on the island and wagering the $10,000 he's already paid them 3-1 that they can't solve it. Steele wonders how they would select a case, and Wainwright pretends not to know, saying, I don't know, ask around, check the newspaper. So Mildred notices newspapers over, like, on the corner of the boat. She gets up, she tells them to wait a minute, goes over to the spot on the deck where we got us. They're just laying around casually, just, as you do. And Wainwright adds that the full resources of the yacht would be at their disposal. Steele thinks it's a fascinating proposition as Mildred rushes over with a newspaper and shows them an article about a missing British writer named Carlton Shepherd who's been missing for 2 weeks. Sounds good to me. Wainwright's satisfied. Laura is not. She tells him to solve it himself and that she's taking the first plane back to L.A. Steele's like, cool. Sounds good to me.
I'll keep the money.
Right, like he's fine with that. You go back to LA, you do your thing. I'm going to stay here and play around in Malta. But and it's funny because you would think if the can agreement was really what they wanted and she just wants to get back to LA, you'd think she'd be fine with this. But of course, she doesn't want him to do it either. So she turns around. And this is where she hits below the belt. She reminds him that she is the brain and he is the brawn. Really?
Yeah, well, he's not necessarily all that great at brawn either. But
no, the man's like 130 pounds. He's not a big guy. Like,
no, and you're right. I mean, it is definitely below the belt, particularly when you consider the fact that even though she is an experienced detective, and certainly more so than he is, he's done his fair share of detecting. He's done his fair share of solving cases.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes it was by accident.
Yeah.
but he's done his fair share. So yeah, it's you're right, a bit below the belt.
It's a cheap shot, and maybe that's
you're the hired help.
You're the pretty face.
You're just for show.
You fit the suit. Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe this is another reason why this particular setup bothers me in season 3, because it made sense in season 1. He wasn't, he hadn't been with them very long. He literally was at that point just there to be the pretty face. He wasn't supposed to be working cases with them. He just always ended up following them around like a puppy. And for the last 2 years, whether he's been an equal partner or not, he's still been a partner. So for her to say, yeah, you're not really, it's like you're just here for the food. You're not really, it's kind of mean, right? And it's playing, she knows this is an insecurity he has. He's said as much to her.
Well, it's also interesting that they're having this argument right there.
Yeah.
With Mildred, who doesn't have a clue
exactly
what's going on. And yet Laura is essentially letting the cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, they're not very careful in this season at all, I've noticed from that standpoint. But yeah, so and it's also, he's not stupid. He's not dumb. Like, no. I'm the brain, you're the brawn. No, what is he, a bouncer? Like, he's not. Yeah, I don't know. That seemed like a not a very nice thing to say to him, especially when he's, he's abided by her rules. Anyway. So he throws back that she may have the formal training, but he has the hard-earned experiences, adding that case after case of bailing her out. His is far more important.
That's a cheap shot too.
Yeah. Now they're both hitting below the belt because, I'm sorry, what? That's an interesting case of revisionist history he's got going on.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, more often than not, he's put her into the middle of it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Kind of dangling her out there, saying, "Okay, now solve this because I've put you into this position where you have no choice.
He runs do or his die." Mouth, and she ends up having to fix his mess for sure.
That's right.
So yeah, now they're both being really not cool to each other.
Petty.
Laura at this point is incredulous, and Steele sticks, as you said, he's doubling down, right? She says, fine, if you want to play games, she'll give him the chance to put his money where his mouth is. She tells him that she will bet him that she can find Carlton Shepherd before he does. He agrees, and he asks what the stakes are. She says pride is enough, and after this case, she doesn't want to hear any more belly aching over who runs the agency and why. Again, Mildred, standing right there.
Yes.
Standing right there. Like,
what do you mean you run the agency?
Yeah.
I guess this could be covered by the he's the boss, but I'm in charge from, earlier on, but still, it still would raise questions. Yeah.
Yeah, because even if that setup were the case and that he owns the agency and she's in charge, there's only so much you can mouth off to your boss or your employer.
Yeah.
Like and one would argue those lines have been blurred for a while, but Mildred.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Laura did want him to tell her, and he tried, didn't work. So maybe Mildred just does not, or Laura, sorry, just does not care at this point. But
could be.
If the guy behind them really was G.W. Wainwright, one of the most wealthy people in Britain, and he's hearing this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's standing there too. Yeah. So. Yeah,
that's maybe not great for their reputation. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Details.
Whoops. Yeah. Steele counters by suggesting if she finds Shepherd, they go right back to L.A. But if he does, they spend another week on the Mediterranean. Don't threaten me with a good time. Okay.
For some reason, I got a feeling neither one of them would consider it a good time at this point.
No, well, maybe not. But I'll volunteer if they don't want to, because yeah. Oh, so they shake hands in agreement. Wainwright gets out a stopwatch and says, "Ready, steady, go," indicating the games have begun. Steele and Laura, we see them both in rubber dinghies ready to leave. Mildred's watching from the deck of the ship, and she asks whose team she's on. Laura said, this is driving me nuts, this bit. Why wouldn't either of them want Mildred? She's proven useful time and time again. But both of them are trying to find excuses why they're on the, like being picked last for softball.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Laura says, "Oh, darn, I wanted Mildred, but Mr. Steele insisted." And then Steele is not happy about that.
This is a kind of case where there's going to have to be some interaction probably with the local officials and government people and maybe some research being done. I mean, that's Mildred's thing.
That's her jam.
Yeah.
And we've seen that she's able to play a part too. And she throws herself into the role. So if they need someone to dress up like a homeless bag lady or...
Yeah, really. Yeah,
she's
so
an asset.
It does make you wonder why there would be such hesitance or even disdain at the idea of taking her along.
She's an asset. She has been an asset. That's why they bring her with them. Literally every time they go anywhere international, she's with them. And to be fair, when they had the first Malta episode, Laura admits she brought her as a buffer, but she came with them in Blue Blooded. She came with them in Ireland. Like she's always with them. She's helpful. So it just feels very bizarre that they would be like, "Oh darn, I want to." Oh well, you can have a telescope. Because Steele, he tosses her a telescope and he says, "I need you on deck. You can be my lookout."
Where does he get? Does he just walk around with a collapsible telescope?
I don't know. Well, up Periscope. One would argue that he's always walking around with a I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. That's not great.
Yes.
I should just shut up. Bad idea.
Yep.
Yeah, so somehow he produces a telescope out of somewhere and throws it to Mildred and says he needs her on deck and she can be his lookout. She asks what she's looking for, and he tells her anything peculiar. And I'm sorry, Mildred's smart enough to know she's being written off here. She has to.
Yes. Yeah.
So, not cool. Laura reminds him of the ground rules: no cooperation, no communication, and no holds barred. He agrees, and she proceeds to shoot a spear gun into his boat.
Yeah.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. I'm assuming you felt the same way about this as I did.
It's really, really petty.
It's
really
super. And it's not only petty, but it sends the message that she's not confident enough in her own capabilities and that she genuinely sees him as a threat, which
I'm not sure I would go that far. You've heard the phrase kick them while they're down.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't do if somebody's down on the ground and you're kicking them, it's not because you consider them a threat necessarily at that point. It's because you just enjoy kicking them while they're down.
Well,
and I'm not going to say that that's in character for Laura, but in the context of this, that seems to be what it is. It's just like I'm going to rub your face in it so hard that I'm going to play the dirtiest game ever. I don't have to, but I'm going to because I enjoy it.
Well, if you think back to Steele Crazy after all these years when they made a similar bet, Laura at first said, like, she didn't seem worried about him at all until midway through the episode where she kind of hinted that he might be kind of goofy, but sometimes he gets it right. And that was season 1. She's had 2 years to see what he actually can do. So to me, and you could be right, it could just be her being extra petty, but to me, this also said, yeah, he's he's actually pretty good at this, and I need to get a head start. Like, I don't think it could be both. I think she genuinely feels she's better at it because of her experience, because that's where she's coming from. But I think she also knows that he's good, and she doesn't want to give him an inch, so she shoots his boat, which is, yeah. But she should also know better, because if she's going to get into a contest of who can be more petty, he's going to win that one, hands down. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some fights that you might want to get into just because of the sheer pleasure of it, but you really don't want to.
No, that man is the mayor of Pettytown, so at this point, yeah, it's not a good idea. So she shoots his boat. He asks Mildred to throw him a line. The rope is too short. She laughs and she speeds away, supposedly to let him drown, I guess. I don't know.
Well, he's got help there, so he probably won't drown, but
true.
Yeah.
So then we see a montage of Laura doing legwork, speaking to different people, different hotels, being directed sort of one person to the next. Man at a hotel, a woman who seems to have some answers, eventually to a man on a fishing pier, and another somewhat disheveled man watching her, who then gets up and follows her. We see Mildred and Steele kind of following the same leads, getting the same responses. He comments to Mildred that Shepard certainly kept a low profile. Nobody seems to have heard of him. Mildred urges him to have patience. This is only the second hotel they've checked. They still have 28 to go. Yikes. That's a lot of hotels for a tiny little island, but I guess if they get a lot of tourism, then yeah.
Well, Anchorage is kind of the same way. We've got this, what people sometimes think is a glut of hotels, and they're constantly building new ones. But, and during the winter, there's probably a fairly high availability on hotel rooms because tourist season is not during the winter up here.
No, I can't imagine it will be.
But, it's balanced by tourist season where the prices of hotel rooms doubles and triples because there's so much demand against what's available. So, yeah, I can see how they would have a glut of hotels or at least a huge number of hotels for a small place, because if they get a lot of tourism, even if it's seasonal, they're going to need those rooms during those peak times. So
that's kind of like Niagara Falls, because Niagara Falls, from May through to, I'd say, even November, if the weather holds out, it packs people in. Obviously, seventh wonder of the world, blah blah blah, and then snow hits and it's a ghost town, right? So, but in that time, your hotels are expensive; they're not cheap. So, so they're checking every single one. Mildred, and this is another one that kind of should make Mildred stop and think twice, because she reminds him that Laura always says detecting is 95% legwork and 5% brain work. Doesn't Mildred find it a little odd she has to remind Steele what Laura always says? If he's supposed to be
Yeah.
the experienced, flashy, great detective Remington Steele, she's like, yeah, but you remember what Miss Holt taught us?
Yeah. I guess, though, you could cover it by saying, well, she's going back to he's the boss, but she's in charge type thing, But yeah, it does definitely would be something where you would think, why does that not seem out of place to her?
Exactly. Like
unless she's just spent a whole lot more time, girl time with Laura than she has Steele, and she hasn't picked up a lot of the, aphorisms from Steele that she's picked up from Laura. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be true. And well, she does know about his aversion to legwork, so
that's true. That is true.
Not a fan. Yeah, so she reminds him of that, and he says, I do like this line. He says, nothing in life is worth doing if you can't take a shortcut. So that's his philosophy. Work smarter, not harder. He laments that she's probably miles ahead by now, and Mildred points out that instead of looking for Shepard, they should be looking for her. Light bulb goes off right above his head, gives him an idea, tells Mildred that she's positively devious. He kisses her cheek and then goes back to the man outside the hotel to inquire as to whether he encountered an American woman who was a brunette in her late 20s and extremely pleased with herself. I do like that detail he adds on there because he's got her number, right? Yeah. So the man Steele's pretty happy. He knows how to find her now. And then we switch and we see Laura in a dinghy rowing it to shore near some caves. She encounters some men sitting around a campfire. I'm kind of curious as to what they're doing there, but I guess just hanging out. I don't know.
Yeah, can I comment that cave looks suspiciously like the cave from Maltese Steel? And
it does, doesn't it?
That beach looks suspiciously like the beach from Steel at It.
You mean they reuse locations?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, isn't it interesting?
It is.
They look so much alike.
They do. Yeah, so she goes up to the men. She tells them she's looking for Carlton Shepard, and she understands he came here. The men do not seem impressed to see her there asking questions. They tell her
how smart is it to walk into a squatter's camp with over half a dozen rough looking and probably pretty questionable looking characters? I mean, and put yourself in a position where you've got no good avenue of escape, as she does, as she walks into the middle of them.
No,
not off to one side, in the dead middle of them. I mean,
I agree.
Come on.
This is that stubborn, and again, this is a line that's said later on, but Steele saying something like, a woman with enough intelligence and training can be as stupidly macho as any man.
Yeah.
This is that situation, right? I also think this is maybe one of those times, I've said it before, that she, coming from where she's coming from, in that she grew up in a sort of comfortable home, went to Stanford, has had and not that they don't encounter danger on a daily basis, they do, but I don't think it's always in the back of her mind that there will be people that will be dangerous inherently as much as it is with Steele. Well, that being said, you're right. It's really dumb to walk into this particular situation.
Well, even if she was raised in an environment where this was not something that she saw growing up.
Yeah.
She's a detective. She's been a detective for years, and we've seen some of the cases she's getting involved in since the shows began, and presumably there were cases like this before, both with the agency and back at Havenhurst. I mean, did she not learn anything while being a detective? No. These kinds of situations, you always, I'm sorry, this is not good detective work. This shows a lack of understanding of your job.
It's not even just the job. Like, I am agreeing with you here, because as a woman, okay, and as a woman who, in her case, she's 100 pounds soaking wet, there should be an inherent awareness of where you are at all times. It just unfortunately goes with the territory. If you're walking down a street at night, you see a bunch of guys coming towards you, that there's that little part of the back of your brain that says, if something happens, where could I run? Right? And it's not right, and it's not really fair, but that kind of is something that we learn growing up.
Just because
And-
something isn't right or fair doesn't mean you should be unaware of it
No,
and
that's
not
my point.
recognize that
Yeah.
that's the reality of the situation.
That's my point. She's she's not,
She's not dumb, but she's acting dumb.
yeah. Because like as a woman myself, I would not walk into this situation
Whoa.
blind. Like I
What?
wouldn't. Yeah,
You?
I know. Yeah.
I wouldn't have known.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. Like she's oblivious to this, to the fact that this is a dangerous situation. And even when she starts asking questions, she can see the men are not, like, they're not people that want her there.
No.
She
not at all.
persists. She doesn't like get in her boat and go. She's, they tell her she's mistaken. Laura is apparently oblivious, continues saying she spoke to the clerk at this hotel who told her, like, she's digging in further here, like,
Yeah, really.
who told her that he went to buy a boat and the man at the dock sent Carlton here to see him. And the man says, "Is that so?" in a tone that is very much not friendly.
Yeah.
They stand up and then Laura tries again, saying she just makes it worse. She's like, "Look, I don't care what business you're in," as subtitles. "I don't care what illegal stuff you're doing. I just want to," like, okay.
You may not care, but somebody else might, and you might say something, and that would be a problem for us. And so we
Right?
will not let you do this.
Yeah. So she says, "I don't care what sort of business you're in." She just wants to find Carlton. Man says he can't help her. Exasperated, she says he's the only family she has in the world. Okay. The guy doesn't buy it at all. We find that out later. But he pretends to. He pauses and reluctantly tells her that he wanted a fast boat with radar and radios. Did you notice his accent suddenly changed here?
No, I did not.
Yeah. It very much, like, and I do like how they do this. They have these accent changes, which again are a signal something's wrong here. But she's still either not picking up on it or refusing to believe that there's a situation she couldn't get herself out of. I think it's more along those lines. Like, in her mind,
Could be.
I can get myself out of anything. I'm tough. I'm strong. I'm independent. I don't need help.
I am woman. Hear me roar.
Yeah. Which, I mean, there's a place for...
It's not the roar isn't what gets you. It's the sharp teeth.
There's a place for that, and there's a place to recognize when you're out of your depth. And this is, he says they occasionally use such boats in their line of work, which again,
Hint.
yeah. Laura asks what he was going to do with it, and the man simply says that he had cash, so he sold him a boat. She asks if it has a name. He tells her it did once, but that's all he can tell her. And all he can tell her is that it's red now. So she gets the message, finally, and thanks him, but it's a little too late. She turns to leave, and she's blocked by the other two men. She tries to get by. They're not letting her go. And the man says to her, "You don't expect to get all that for nothing, did you?"
Gas, grass, or nobody rides for free.
Right? Like, she recognizes she's in danger. She tries to push past them. They grab her. So I get that this is a scene where she's finally started to realize, hey, I'm in danger here. But it's a weird one because the music is super upbeat. They're passing her back and forth like it's like they're playing Keep Away. It almost takes all the sinister air out of the scene.
They may not have wanted it to seem too sinister. So
I mean, it already does, right? Like and I'm not talking about the men. I'm talking about
but they could have wanted it more light in the music in order to kind of blunt that. They didn't want it to get too serious, too deadly.
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know. It seems kind of odd because what do they intend to do with her? I think we can all fill in that blank, right?
We're gonna have a party,
right? Like this. If it doesn't end up being a gang rape, then it's going to be murder. Like, she's not going to get out alive. So to me,
or at least not in good condition.
Yeah. To me, there's an appropriate level of sinisterness that should be here, but kind of gets sucked out of it with this happy, upbeat music and the fact that they're just sort of pushing her back and forth. Like,
I'm not defending it. I'm just trying to explain.
Yeah. Okay. But this is the point where Steele appears from behind. His hand is in his pocket, trying to make it look as if he has a gun. Does this ever work?
Finger guns never work.
Like, I can't imagine this would
unless
ever
you're in
work.
grade school, then you get suspended for 3 weeks. But yeah,
Because if you really have a gun, you pull it out, wouldn't you?
you tend to. Yeah.
And the only reason you would have not to pull it out is if you're, say, in a public area where a gun would attract police.
Unwanted attention, yes.
But they're not. They're on an island. So this would be the perfect time to pull out an actual gun if you have one, which he clearly doesn't.
That's right.
So yeah.
But they don't buy it, of course.
Of course. No, they're not. Well, they start to. He tells them not to move, to back up. Laura gets up, comes to his side. The two of them turn to run away, and he trips, and his hands come out of his pockets. Whoops. Whoopsie.
That didn't work.
No, it does not, because they all pull out a bunch of knives. It's like knifey spoony. That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is where they make a run for it, but not before Steele attempts to disarm them with his jacket, which is white again. Once again, they're in a... Did you have that?
What's with throwing the jacket? I mean... that's a scary jacket. He's going to throw it at me. I don't know what to do.
No, please, no. Yeah. I guess when that's all you've got, I guess you hope it does something, but yeah, it's kind of, yeah, so.
And then they do a repeat of Steel Framed.
Yes, they do.
Hey, here's a big puddle of water. Let's dive in it and see if we can get out on the other side. What if it doesn't? Oh, I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there. As we drown.
To be fair, they were literally between a rock and a hard place. So drown or get stabbed.
You were waiting for that, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, yes. But yeah, it was drown or get stabbed. So I guess those were their two options, and they picked the one where there might be a way out. So, but yeah, they go into the caves. They run, but eventually they end up like on the edge of a platform with nothing but water, and the men behind them. Laura tries to reason with them. They're not going to be reasoned with, so Steele points out there's only one way to go. Dive into the water, swim under the rocks. The men laugh, thinking they can't go anywhere. But thankfully they get lucky once again and come out on the other side. And she tells him that he's lucky, and he says luck has nothing to do with it, but she doesn't think he could have known that the pool would lead them out. He points out she's just upset he had to save her. Dude, time and a place, my man. Time and a place. Like, does he want to survive? Like,
it is. I mean, it's like that's just the bull is angry, and you're going to go out there and just taunt it some more.
Yeah, right? It's not smart.
No, it's not.
It's not smart, especially since she at this point probably does feel some gratitude to him showing up. She's not going to say it out loud, but she feels it. And yet he's going to just make it worse by saying, yeah, you're just mad because I had to save you.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, she argues she could have gotten out of that. She couldn't.
No.
But he tells her that next time, and to be fair, if it had been him in the same situation, he'd also be screwed. Like, that's not even down to gender. That's down to more of them than there is of you and knives. Right? Like,
yeah, and see, that's the thing is that, again, it's an issue of, as you say, not gender. It's an issue of recognizing when you are in a situation where you can't win.
No. There's more of them than there is of you. It
doesn't matter who you are.
They have weapons. You don't. It's going to be an unfair fight. You're going to lose.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he points out she's just oh, sorry, I already had said that. He tells
her, just like this episode. It's a repeat.
It feels like it. He tells her next time he will let her, and she reminds him that it doesn't change anything about the bet. He tells her it's more fun to keep her alive until the end. Oh, that one's funny.
Like
so
a cat playing with the mouse.
Right. We go back to the yacht and see that now they have a speedboat. Wainwright tells them that 6 hours have gone by. They have 42 to go. So all three of them speed off in the boat. Laura comments that Wainwright seems to be enjoying this far too much for her satisfaction, And Steele says that for $30,000, he can do handstands on the deck naked for all he cares. Something I don't want to picture, but it's a funny line. So, yeah. Steele adds that he's starting to savor the chase. And Mildred, super clever here, asks Laura what Shepard wanted with the bums at the grotto. And Laura tells her a fast, sophisticated boat, though she isn't sure why. Steele laughs and congratulates Mildred. And Laura's ticked off that she just got tricked, right?
Yep.
And I mean, to be fair, I can sort of understand why, because if they're all three of them together, this probably feels like your normal case. Mildred asking a question, something that happens all the time. She just answered. It was out of instinct.
Out of habit.
Yeah, but she hits her fist on the boat in frustration when she realizes she's been tricked. So good job, Mildred. They pull into a dock. Laura gets out, ties up the boat. And I know, again, noticing the clothing here, I pointed out before that Steele wears a lot of white whenever they're in somewhere tropical. Laura also wears either white or with some really bright colors. In the first scene, she had bright pink pants. She looked like a bottle of Pepto-Bismol. And now she's wearing bright pink shorts. And I got to say, I've praised a lot of her fashion choices this season. Not a fan of the pink pants and the pink shorts. I'm not a fan. For one, I think they make her look far younger, like a little kid almost.
I will definitely agree that those shorts and that top from this point on don't do her well.
No, not really. So
I won't say anything about the pants.
Oh, you like the pink pants?
And the top.
Interesting. Okay.
I didn't say that.
Eric's
I said I'm not going to say anything about it.
His weird fashion sense continues.
I also like the fact that at least in those earlier scenes, especially the ones back on the yacht before they took off the first time, it didn't look like they had her made up real heavily.
No, that's true.
And yeah.
Although the pink pants
feel
really out of place in a really warm climate like that. You wouldn't think you'd want to wear full.
Why would pink be out of place in a tropical environment?
I don't mean the color. I mean pants, like just wearing jeans in general.
Well, I mean, look at the flags in the scene behind them on this boat sequence. They're not standing 100% straight out, but they're like 80% straight out. So they've obviously got some wind going on. They're on the water. It could be cool.
True. That's true. Yeah. I've never been to Malta, so I can't.
Good.
See, literally the only reason you're defending them is because sure. Okay. We're moving on.
I'm not going to say anything else to get myself in trouble.
She thanks them for the lift and says that she hopes there's no hard feelings about the raft. Steele says he's glad she's into the spirit of things and tells her that she has become a regular game player. A couple of police approach and refer to Steele by name. He tells Laura that she still has one or two things to learn. He turns her over to the men, and they tell her she is under arrest.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say this is her fault, but like, remember how he said he's the king of Petty Town? He's the mayor of Petty Town.
What goes around comes around.
This is exactly something he would do. And I don't know. She should have seen this coming because she demands to know what.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that, and I like it as they're carrying her off. Yeah. They lift her up, and she's sitting there pedaling in the air with her feet. Her
feet are still going. It's like a little dog whose feet, like, and I mean, it's only funny because we find after he speaks to Mildred that he paid them to detain her for a little bit. She's not really arrested. Yeah. Because if she was, if he was really getting her arrested in another country, that would be bad. But in this case,
well, and as you were starting to say before I interrupted, the pretext was willful and malicious destruction to a nautical vessel in island waters. I mean, that is, talk about pushing the definition.
Right. So yeah, if it weren't for the fact that we know she's not really being fully arrested, I'd say this is really over the line. But Steele, he's having a great time with this. He tisks as they take her away, and as you said, they lift her up. Her little feet are going at her shocking disregard for personal property. She tries to tell them it wasn't even his raft, but he laughs and says,
that's even better, because
right,
now it's not you're just destroying his property, you're destroying somebody else's property. This is so. That's an excuse. We'll just let you go now.
Yeah. Steele laughs and says the wheel of crime bears bitter fruit. So Mildred asks if he's really going to let her rot in jail, and he says no, he just plans to let them detain the harpoon-happy Miss Holt for a few hours. She asks how he can be sure, and he tells her experience and the fact that while she was changing, he called and arranged a generous donation to the pension fund. So,
yeah, right. Yeah. Their pension fund, I'm sure, is defined as their own pockets.
Yeah, or fundraising for the office Christmas party, whatever it happens to be. So.
Oh no! Don't waste the money like that. Just put it in your own personal bank account.
True.
Yeah. So anyway,
Mildred asks where they're going. Steele tells her to buy nautical charts, adding that if he bought a boat, it's logical to assume that he needed to know where he was going. Mildred tells him he's amazing, and Steele basks in the praise. And this is where, Mildred's fawning is, we've seen this before, but this is where we also see that Steele does know what he's doing. He's not stupid. He does have, especially for season 1, Mr. Steele had raw instinct, but nothing more, right? Now he's had a bit of experience. He's learned from her. She has taught him things.
Yeah.
So while he still has an extreme aversion to legwork, he's not completely incompetent. He knows what the next step is, which is why I think Laura does somewhat feel that he's a threat, because she's seen what he can do. They take different approaches. That's probably the only thing that I do find interesting about this episode and Steele Crazy, is that we get to see the different ways that they work. But at the end of the day, it just feels like a rehash. Anyway, they go into a store selling nautical charts. Steele has shown the newspaper clipping to the clerk. He does say he remembers him and says he's been missing for 2 weeks. Steele says he's been missing for 2 weeks. The clerk isn't surprised. He says he didn't know much about fishing. He wanted a chart for Agra Bay. Mildred asks what's wrong with Agra Bay. The clerk says there's no fish, and it would be a long trip for nothing. Steele asks what is there, and the clerk tells him seagulls and the curdle. He tells him that there's and I don't know much about fishing, so if you know much stuff about fishing, you can correct me here if I'm wrong, but it's an ocean. It's a bay. Would there not be fish there? Like,
I'm not a fishing expert. I don't. I've tried to go fishing before in the past. I've done it a few times. I don't enjoy it. I do enjoy the eating part. So, I just got to find somebody who has more fish than freezer, so I can just help them out. But I believe that there are certain areas of the ocean where the fish population is much lower than other areas. It has to do with temperatures, water flow, probably a whole variety of things. But yeah, there are certain areas where it's good fishing grounds, and certain areas where it's not good fishing grounds, and it's all based on the number of fish that are in that area. If it's not a good fishing ground, it's because there's not a lot of fish there. So it does happen. I don't know why a bay would be necessarily less of a fishing ground than somewhere else, but yeah, I can see it.
Fair enough. I'm not a fan of fishing either. I've only ever, to me, it's just a bunch of sitting around, and then eventually, if you do
there's a reason why it's called fishing and not catching.
Yeah. And I've been fishing a bunch of times. I've only ever caught a fish once out of the times that people have taken me fishing against my will. And it was when we were in Florida. We went deep sea fishing. We had a boat take us out into deeper waters, and I caught something, and I reeled it up, and I looked into its little floppy face, and I felt so guilty that I threw it back. And that's the last time I've attempted to catch. I don't like looking at my food while it's still alive. I'm not a vegetarian. I like meat. I'll eat it, but I don't.
I do my fishing at the store.
Yeah, I do my fishing at the seafood aisle of Sobeys. That's where I get.
And the fact is, in reality, the most fishing that is done by people, it falls into 3 camps, I think. There's commercial fishing, which is, a large boat with huge nets, and it's
Yeah.
just a factory type process.
Yeah.
Then there's the people that go out fishing. They may live remote, and so they're doing it for subsistence.
Yeah.
And they are probably the very small minority of people, and they're doing that because that's their food. They are doing that because they need to do that to live. I think the majority of people, though, are what's called sports fishermen.
Yeah.
And I have, because I've been doing Uber and Lyft for years, I've taken a lot of people to the airport who have got these boxes of frozen fish. You know, they catch a fish, they box it up, it gets packed in dry ice so that they can ship it. And I know for a fact that many of them say that by the time they get done paying for everything, it's cost them over $100 a pound. I'm sorry, I can go to the store and buy a whole lot more fish.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's way more expensive to catch the fish than it is to go to the store. Yeah, but then,
you know,
then you don't get to tell.
It's not going to cost me $100 a pound at the store.
Then you don't get to tell stories about the one that got away and it was this big, you know?
Yeah, which nobody believes anyway. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And I agree. We've got a lot of indigenous people in Canada that do still fish for subsistence. But for the most part, it's, either the factories or the sport fishermen or people that are out on vacation or whatever. So, I'm not a person that goes fishing. But I would be more than happy to help somebody by taking some excess fish off their hands if they don't have freezer space. If anyone wants to send me their salmon, or I'll take it.
Halibut.
Just for the halibut.
Yeah.
So then Steele asks, sorry. Can't help myself. So he says seagulls and the colonel. He tells them that he's a rich English man who never leaves his villa, and that he's getting married to a local girl. Steele tells him that he will take a chart for Agrabah as well. At which point the man is probably thinking, moron, okay. Just told you there's no fish there, but whatever. In jail.
Well, of course, he would have probably figured out that neither one of them are going there for the fish. The first guy wasn't there for the fish, probably. And even if he was, Steele is going there for some reason other than the fish, probably following the first guy.
Yeah. Like Douglas Adams once said, so long, thanks for all the fish. In jail, it's one of the Hitchhiker books.
Yes.
Laura is not impressed. She tries to lay down, sits back up, throwing a newspaper on the floor in frustration. Was that her pillow? Did they give her a newspaper as a pillow?
I guess it's hard to see because it's a dark blanket on top of the bed.
Right.
It looks like there might be a little bit of a rise underneath the blanket on one end, which might be a pillow, but it's hard to say. These places are not exactly 5-star.
No.
So nice. I doubt they're all that concerned about the amenities.
It's nice they provided her with reading material, though. So that's not bad.
And a picture. I'm not sure if that's incoming or outgoing, but there's a picture in the corner. True.
She picks the newspaper back up. She notices something odd. She pulls out the newspaper page with the article on it on Shepard and compares them. The surrounding headlines are the same, but the other paper has no article on Shepard. So now she obviously knows that this case was a setup. She goes to the bars and begins to shake them, demanding to be let out. When dust falls from the top of the bars, she goes over to the window and begins kicking it until she knocks the bars out. I'm sorry, did she suddenly become the Incredible Hulk? What?
I guess the story is that it's such an old, cheaply constructed building that's half decayed. The concrete or the material that the walls are made out of has deteriorated so much that even a child could get out of it if they tried. It's a good thing
nobody else has ever tried to break out of that jail.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah.
And I realized that he bribed these guys to put her in this holding cell for a little while, but there might be some consequences to the fact that she's just knocked the
Well,
window out.
it could also just be that it was like a cell in a part of a building where they don't actually use it anymore because it is in such poor condition.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's true.
And so they knew that she would be able to eventually get out, and that was part of the setup. So, I mean, nothing else in this case up to this point, or in this episode, thinking back to the first case that they had there, nothing has been what it seems to be. So
that's true.
Why should this be?
And she gets out, she runs out, she finds Mildred sitting at a cafe. She asks where he is, but Mildred assumes that this is still part of the game. She says, you know the rules. Laura tells her, forget the bet. They've been had. She needs to find him. Mildred insists that Steele said she would try anything. And to be fair, she would. So Mildred's no fool here. This is literally, Mildred just doesn't realize Laura's not playing the game anymore.
Yeah. I mean, after you've been caught lying so many times, when you finally tell the truth, nobody believes you.
Exactly. She's crying wolf. Laura insists she's not trying to trick him. She needs to find him. She yells at Mildred until she points in a direction and tells her that he went that way. Laura kisses her and runs off in pursuit. And just as she's out of sight, Steele drives by in a speedboat, revealing that Mildred has once again tricked her.
Why didn't Laura bring the newspapers with her to prove it?
Right. Like, I mean, at least then Mildred would be able to see that, hey, she's not kidding. This is really...
Well, yeah, there's something that's off here. And she would be at least a bit more receptive to the notion. Yes.
Meanwhile, we see Steele in his rented speedboat sailing past a sign in Agra Bay that says private waters, no trespassing. In the distance near an island, he sees a red boat. He starts to maneuver towards it when a helicopter appears overhead and a voice says, attention, you are in private waters, leave at once. He takes the top off the motor, points to it, and I guess pretends it's not working. He draws his thumb across his throat to indicate the motor's dead.
Yeah. I got a question about that, because the fact that the helicopter was on him that quickly means that they knew he was there. They had detected him. They would have been able to tell that he had been under power until their arrival.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And not, if you're going to tell a lie, make it a good one.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is not a good lie.
It is not a good lie. And they know it's not a good lie because they open fire. So he puts the top on real quick and turns the boat back on and speeds away.
Yeah.
So outside, this major compound, we see a man with a machine gun. He's walking with another man. They head towards the door. There's more men guarding it. They've all got machine guns. These two men enter the building, which looks to be inside a luxurious home. And inside an office, we hear a man with an English accent on the phone instructing whoever it is on the other end to sell his shares in Tristan Electronics when it reaches 42. He says he might want to buy into the Italian ship concern and tells them to check the exchange rate. So he's obviously, this is the colonel that we've heard lives here, and he's doing his business from inside this office. And as he says all of this, a beautiful young red-headed woman enters his office. She stands up, and he addresses her as Anna, which, again, we get this name Anna. It's a popular side character name. He kisses her on the head, and in a soft, almost childlike voice, she tells him she wanted to tell him about the flowers for the wedding. He says, yes, of course. The men enter again with a man in a blue shirt, and one in a white dress shirt. He asks her if the question can wait. She says it can, thanking him and calling him the colonel. He tells her to call him Richard, and she leaves. If we knew nothing else about the colonel, this would be an odd exchange. If you're marrying somebody and you're calling them by their title and not their first name, something's off.
Yeah, and the way she comes in and she approaches him, the way she talks to him, it's, I don't know. I've never been impressed by her character. She always seems like, I don't want to say that she's slow, but she's not an impressive personality.
No, she's not. She's a table lamp. She's okay.
She's arm candy. Yeah.
I have this theory that there are some parts in film and television that if you replace the character with a table lamp nobody would notice. This is one of them, right? If you replace her with a table lamp, nobody notices. She barely has any lines. The lines she does have are very deferential to the colonel. And that's probably what they're trying to get at, that she's obedient and submissive and whatever else. But she might as well be a table lamp, right? She's not, you forget she's even there for most of the time. And the rest of it, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, that's the woman he's marrying. So, so she...
Yeah, is it really going to be a marriage, or is it just a show?
She's
part of his collection.
Yeah, he's acquired her for sure.
Yes,
and that speaks more to his character than anything else, because we find out, especially towards the end, what a sociopath he is. So the man in the white shirt introduces the man in blue as Stefan from the harbor. Stefan tells Richard that a woman came to the harbor asking a lot of questions about Shepard. Richard asks who she is. Stefan says her name is Laura Holt. Richard, or the colonel, asks if any boats have appeared in the harbor recently. He says yes, one, telling him it's a big pleasure cruiser called the Queen's Gambit 2. Richard thanks him and instructs his men to pay him. Stefan leaves, and Richard looks at the man in the white shirt and says, he's here. After 10 years, I thought he might have given up. His man offers to double security and asks about the prisoner. Richard tells him to leave him, thinking he might finally talk when he sees they know the truth. He then says he has a job for the man. So... obviously, there's more to this situation that we're not finding out just yet, but back on Wainwright's yacht, he's continuing to deny Laura's accusations. She's not having it. She tells him the story's phony. She accuses him of another one of his elaborate charades. And Mildred, meanwhile, is looking off the back of the boat and pointing at something, trying to get Laura's attention. This bit is quite funny. She tells Wainwright the game is over and that they should find Mr. Steele and settle accounts. While Wainwright insists she's wrong, Mildred's still, guys, you're going to want to look at this. Like, turn around. Eventually, Mildred raises her voice. Laura goes over to see what she's pointing at. A large boat is speeding towards them with men in uniforms from the compound.
That boat almost looks more like a military boat.
It did kind of, yeah. Well, he does call himself the colonel, so it could be that.
Yeah, but often that title is kind of an honorary thing, or they had been in the military and that was their retirement rank, and they just hold on to it. But I wouldn't think that he would, unless he has some very, very, very deeply embedded tentacles into the local government because of his financial wealth or position or whatever. I wouldn't think he could summon a government boat to do his dirty work for him, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does look like it's something that's more militaristic for sure.
Yeah.
And Laura again accuses him of playing more games. Wainwright says he wasn't told about this. They raise their guns, which they have, and Laura yells to get down as they shoot holes in the boat. When they sit back up, Wainwright's accent has changed dramatically. He now sounds far more rough and coarse. It is not his other English accent.
Not the refined one, yeah.
No, he is shocked and he cries out, "They're real bullets!" Laura asks who they are, and Wainwright says, "How should I know? I'm just a bloody actor." And he rips off his fake mustache. Yeah, Laura's pretty shocked. So we've got, this kind of makes me think of the third Iron Man movie? Where you've got Ben Kingsley's character. He's supposedly this terrorist that's threatening the world. And then I think it's the third one. And then when Iron Man finally gets there, he finds out Ben Kingsley's character, the terrorist, isn't real at all. He's just an actor that they hired to, sit in a room and pretend to threaten the world. And the real villain is someone else. Makes me think of that.
Sounds like a Bond movie.
Well, yeah, kind of. It does. It's very much a Bond-esque concept for sure. So, and we've got Steele. So, yeah. The boat circles around for a few more shots as the crew jumps ship. Laura demands to know who he really is. And the man formerly known as Wainwright, who now speaks with a noticeable stutter, tells him he is Benjamin Applegate. I was a little confused here because at first I thought he said his name was Appleby.
A restaurant.
And honestly, I had that throughout the entire script or the entire of my notes until they get to the scene where she finds this file and it says Applegate on it. I was like, oh, so I had to go back and change all the times I wrote Applebee. So there might still be some Applebee's in here. And if I say Applebee, that's why. It's not that I'm hungry. It's because I misheard him.
You know, there's a search and replace function on your.
I did know that and I forgot. So that's where we're at. Anyway, yeah, he's Benjamin Applegate, a provincial actor and part-time electrician. He starts.
What a weird combination.
They didn't even hire anybody good. You know, he's part-time electrician. Yeah. He starts telling them how this all began, but Laura interrupts, asking if there are any guns on board. She grabs him, and the three of them make a run for the cabin. The boat circles around again, shooting at them until they pull up alongside, and the two men jump off the boat onto Applegate's boat. Laura, Mildred, and Applegate make it into, well, it's not his boat, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Laura, Mildred, and Applegate make it into the cabin, and they find a flare gun. She's not impressed, but Applegate insists, hey, it's still a gun. I don't know how much damage could I'm assuming a flare gun could do some damage, right?
Well,
if you shoot it like close range enough.
Yes and no. I mean, it depends on what you're shooting at. You think about it, it's burning. What is it? I think it's phosphorus. I may be wrong on that, but it's burning at a very, very high temperature. Yeah. And so you get shot with it, it's going to hurt. Yeah. Yeah. You shoot something that is a wooden structure, you could very well set it on fire. If you shoot at a steel ship, probably just bounce off of it.
Fair enough. I'm thinking she's thinking more along the lines of shooting at someone. So, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it would definitely do some damage if you shot it at somebody and it hit them. But unless you've got extra flares to put into it, it's a one-shot thing. Yeah, I mean, you make it a good shot, make it a shot that's going to not just take that person out, but do significant damage to the forces of your enemy as to totally disable them, because if there's, you take out one guy and there's four more, you haven't really accomplished anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Accomplished anything. Sorry, choked there.
Well, don't choke, because then I have to host this thing on my own. So
yeah, well, you could probably do it a lot better than I could. Anyway, where were we? Yes.
I'd have no foil. I'd have no one to make dad jokes to. It wouldn't work.
You'd have nobody to play the bad cop.
Exactly. There's got to be a good cop and a bad cop. So, yeah, no. She looks around. She realizes she doesn't see the boat. She sneaks out of the cabin. We see one of the men on deck looking around. She pops up on the boat. Laura's head pops up on top of the boat, and she ducks before he can see her. She jumps down behind him, hits him with the butt of the flare gun, then grabs him by the legs and throws him overboard. So at least, I mean, I guess it did some damage that way.
Yeah.
She continues to look for the second man who's on the other end of the boat, standing near a life raft with a tarp over it. The tarp is lifted, and we see Mildred and Applegate inside it. Applegate is holding a bottle of wine, and he lifts it as if to hit the man over the head, but chickens out at the last second. Mildred takes it, and she attempts to hit him. She doesn't hit him very hard, though. And it's funny because we often see this in movies where they hit somebody over the head with something and they just drop, right? Mm-hmm. And most of the time, that's not going to happen. You'd hit them over the head, they'd be like, ow! And then they'd turn around or if you hit them that hard, you've either killed them or they've got a concussion. This is more realistic. Yeah. She bonks him with it. Doesn't do any damage, though. And then he turns and he sees them. He points the gun at them. And Laura yells loud enough for the man to turn, and she fires the flare gun right into his stomach.
Yeah, ow. That's going to hurt.
So, yeah, it burns enough that he jumps off the boat and into the water. So, yeah, that she made the gun count. They run back into the cabin. She takes the wheel. Mildred says she didn't know Laura could drive one of these things, and she says, neither did I. So she tells Mildred to throw some switches in the hopes they can get it started. They do, and she begins to drive the boat. Applegate asks, where are we going? And Laura, just grateful to get away, says, does it matter? Probably.
Like he's standing there with half of his mustache there and half of a gun. Yeah.
Probably matters a little bit, though, because I don't think I'd want to end up, like, deep in the ocean with no fuel. So,
well, yeah, that's true. But, it doesn't matter in the sense that we don't want to be here. We want to be
we want to be
somewhere else.
Yeah.
So as long as we're going somewhere else, then it's like that old Abbott and Costello joke.
Yeah.
Where he introduces Abbott and he says, or they go out and he says, I'm sorry that my partner couldn't be here. And Abbott says, well, I'm standing right here. And he says, no, I can prove you're not here. And he says, are you in Chicago? No. Are you in St. Louis? No. Are you in New York? No. Well, if you're not in Chicago or St. Louis or in New York, then you must be somewhere else. And if you're somewhere else, you can't be here.
Makes perfect sense. I see the logic. Yeah. Meanwhile,
Anyway.
in the countryside near the estate, we see a man in a white poncho herding some goats. That turns out to be Mr. Steele, who exhibits some annoyance as the goat takes a liking to him.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to know how he got the goats and the poncho, but we're just gonna scale right over that, I guess. He pulls out
if you got money, you can borrow and rent anything for a while.
He pulls out his binoculars and begins to watch the estate, not pretends. He sees two men near a door, and the one man opens it to let the other in. The man near the door is armed. He lowers the binoculars and begins to shoo the goat away once more, only for the camera to pan down to what turns out to be a machine gun against his leg. I get the joke they were going for, but if you were the man with the machine gun, why would you be sticking it like against his leg? I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway,
for the joke.
Yeah. He is instructed to put his hands up. He does that, but then somebody else hits him over the head with a gun. Hits the man with the gun from behind with a rock. So once again, as in TV and movies, he just falls.
Mm-hmm.
And the other man tells him he better get out of here or more will be coming. Steele thanks him, and the man, speaking with an Irish accent, introduces himself as Michael Banks. Steele and that's just what I'm going to call him until the big reveal is held.
Mm-hmm.
Steele introduces himself, and the Irishman says it's a hell of a name for a goat herd. Steele tells him he's a private investigator looking for Carlton Shepherd. What a coinky-dink. Banks is as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the point where I think that as good as Steele is, I don't know if Laura would have fallen for this.
She's fallen for some stuff. I mean,
she has, but I mean, she's also
now I'm not sure she would fall for that beard and mustache, but anyway,
she's also pulled this person is my cousin and I'm deeply worried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ploy. I don't know. This one seems a little far-fetched that he buys into it, but either way, Banks says that he's looking as well. He's his cousin. The family's worried sick. So.
Yeah, I'm just I never did buy that mustache and the beard. To me, it always looked fake.
No, it looks silly. Yeah, it really does. He asks Steele why he's looking for him, and Steele says, professional challenge. He says he thinks he's being held in the villa, and Banks says, oh, he is, and he'd stake his life on it. And Banks adds that he told Carlton not to get involved in this story. Steele asks what he means, and Banks tells him he's a journalist who likes to go after rough and tumble stories, such as certain war stories, things like that. He says he got a tip while back in Johannesburg about a man called the Colonel, real name Richard Moreland, a mercenary soldier in one of those African wars about 10 years ago. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of places that are experiencing political unrest.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe mention a specific war, though, because that feels very dismissive. Like, one of those wars about 10 years ago.
Well, from Banks, I'll say Banks's point of view, he doesn't want to get too specific.
True.
And so he's going to be just kind of obtuse in the reference because he doesn't want anything to get back about him. He doesn't want to raise any questions about what, specific incidences that might have occurred. So, yeah, I can understand why he would do that. Yeah, you're right. It is probably somewhat dismissive to just put it that way, but it's intentionally dismissive.
Fair enough.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's not without purpose. It's not just because it's attitudinal of, well, it's just, one of those African wars.
Yeah.
Those African people, they're always just having those little silly wars. No, there's a very specific reason why he didn't want to say that. So.
Fair enough. To be fair, most of those wars are colonizers and the African people, not necessarily them fighting each other, although that does happen. But yeah, if you think of South Africa, for example. Anyway, he thought he would get rich quick, so he killed 2 payroll guards on their side and left with $400,000 and vanished. He says that Carlton heard he was living out here like a lord of the manor and got all excited about exposing him. Steele realizes Moreland caught on first and tells him they should get the authorities. Banks says he already tried that, but they're in Moreland's pocket. He says the only way to spring him is to do the job himself, but the trouble is the place is like a fortress. Steele smiles and says that may be the key. Banks says, what do you mean by that? And Steele says he's designed his defenses to hold off a battalion, but 2 men might slip in unnoticed. Banks smiles and says, 2 men? And Steele nods and they shake hands. Banks says he likes the spirit, so now they're gonna...
They're buddy-buddy.
Yeah, they're good friends in his silly beard. So now we're back at a cafe. Laura and Mildred are sitting with Applegate. He's complaining he could have been playing full staff or rewiring his mom's kitchen. I love that those are the 2 options. He's either on stage playing, great characters in literature, or, doing electrical work in his mom's kitchen.
How much do you want to bet that the majority of his acting is in the community theater?
Probably, yeah, if that, yeah. Mildred asks why he bothered to impersonate Wainwright, and he tells him it was for the money. Laura says that his agent sent him to see a man in London who said he represented Wainwright, and Applegate says, yeah, that's right, and tells him that Americans wouldn't know what he looks like as he's a very private person. All the man in London wanted was someone who could do a very public school accent and take direction. Now, I looked this up because I had never heard that phrase before, public school accent. I mean, I've heard BBC accent as a phrase, because that's a very common, like, people who speak really proper British English are often, or at least my husband, I've heard him and others say, that's a BBC accent. That's the proper British accent that you hear when you're watching the BBC. Okay. It's not local. It's not too difficult to understand what they're saying. It's not like you're in Liverpool or...
something of a generic accent that is understood by everybody, regardless of their own native accent.
Yeah, exactly. So I Googled public school accent because I've never really heard that phrase. Mm-hmm. And I got this article from Britannica called Received Pronunciation. Standard speech used in London and southeastern England, traditionally been associated with the middle and upper class and as a mark of a public school education. Received pronunciation is sometimes referred to as the Queen's English, the King's English, BBC English, or Oxford English. So all the same sort of thing, but yes, he can do a public school accent or he can do a BBC accent. So yeah, associated with British public schools, including Eton College, Winchester, Harrow. These are all major universities and public school. Like Eton College is where one of the princes went to. So it's where you get your upper crust. University of Oxford, Cambridge, both one's on the Thames and one's on the difference between Oxford and Cambridge. So yeah, Applegate, he can do a public school accent, and that's how he got the job and take direction. He admits the entire point was to get her and Mr. Steele to go after Shepard. Laura, she's still trying to wrap her head around this. She asks who Shepard is, but Applegate admits he hasn't got a clue. He says if they found him, he was supposed to leave a message at an address. Laura asks if he still has it. He pulls out a piece of paper and hands it to her. Laura stands up and says, come on, to Mildred. Mildred asks if they should find Mr. Steele. So obviously Mildred gets it now. Mm-hmm. But Laura is convinced that he is safely somewhere barking up the wrong tree. I think she would know better by now that probably not, and he hasn't popped up in a while. That's not a good sign.
Yeah, and I guess you would kind of think that given the duplicity and the double dealing going on throughout this entire scenario or sequence of scenarios, that it would at least occur to her that, okay, yeah, he may be barking up the wrong tree, but maybe he's in the middle of the right tree and he's gotten caught in kind of the limbs of it. Yeah, you at least want to try and figure out, where he's at, what he's doing, and get him on board. Try and enlist him to help out with this, because game's over at this point. Yeah, basically.
The bet's null and void. It's not a real contest. And also he could be in danger. They were just shot at. They were.
He could be in danger. Plus, they've said it before. They work better together as a team than
She's the one who reminded him of that.
Well, yeah, but that was then.
Yeah. It feels weird that she doesn't want to get him.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels weird that Mildred's fine with that and doesn't say, well, I sent him here. Especially since. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's a bit of an odd decision. And then they probably wouldn't have been able to find him, but that would have then clued her into the fact that, hey, something's wrong. So, Applegate says he's coming with them. Mildred's like, well, I thought you told me you were a confirmed coward. And Applegate says, well, I am, but I haven't been paid yet. So, I guess that trumps his desire to keep hold of all his limbs. Or at least he does at this point. So, outside the estate, we see a giant chessboard reminiscent of the one in Harry Potter.
Does playing chess with life-size pieces make it a more enjoyable or interesting or challenging game?
No,
I mean, what is it?
It means that you're super duper rich and that you can order your servants to move your chess pieces. You don't have to do that yourself, you see.
So silly. So silly.
It is really
I'm
silly.
sorry if any rich people out there listening are offended, but I'm sorry. That's just silly.
And also, I mean, I got to know, is there a company that makes these lifestyle, like, do you order from a catalog? I don't
know. These almost look like there's something that somebody, you hire somebody, just here, make these big pieces for me, or you do it yourself in your own shop. Yeah, I would think that if you're rich enough that you're going to play chess with life-size pieces and you're going to go buy them, you're going to get better quality pieces than what these are. These are pretty low end.
they don't look great. That's true. We see this, the servants are moving the pieces around on two giant chairs, which makes them look like they're sitting in a high seat, like a
high chair. Yeah.
High chair. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. They look like they're sitting in a high chair.
All they need is the tray and the little sippy cups in front of them.
Yeah, exactly. We see Richard, Moreland, and Anna, and they're watching as the pieces are moved. She's made a move. Richard asks if she's sure she wants to do that. She nods. Moreland orders the queen to take the rook. A man moves the piece into place, giving him checkmate. Don't you have to announce the pieces in check first? This drives me crazy because I'm not an expert.
Well, I don't know.
But my grandmother taught me to pay.
One of the things about this life-size chess game, though, is that it seems to me it would be hard to see the board. So maybe, to see the board, see where the pieces are at, see where they are relative to each other. So maybe he didn't know that she was in check. Or maybe she walked into it. I don't know.
It's one of these things that drives me crazy in movies because you see it all the time. A character will move a piece and go checkmate, and then the other person will be like, how did you win? But I always thought that it was required to announce, although I just Googled it because it was going to bug me. And as of 2003, apparently this is no longer required under the rules of chess and is not encouraged in formal games. However, in informal games, most players still announce check. So it was a thing you had to do. And it's considered very bad.
In the 80s, it would have been then.
Yeah, I guess I don't. Anyway, I
mean, if they changed the rules in 2003 to not require it, then prior to that, it was required, which since this was before that, it would have been required at that time.
So anyway,
well, but then again, if we haven't figured it out already, we learn later that this guy is a sleazebag.
Oh, he's awful.
And the kind of guy who will rob, cheat, steal, kill. So he doesn't announce chess, that somebody's in check during the chess game. So what? I mean, that's nothing compared to other things he's done.
It is the greatest crime he could have ever committed. I'm sure there are chess players out there shaking their fist right now.
Yes.
Sorry. It doesn't matter.
Let him commit murder. Let him commit robbery, but don't put somebody in check without announcing it.
Fine. He helps her down off the chair, telling her that she's learning and this is a difficult game. Again, with the pat on the head.
And this seems in contrast to her personality, because she doesn't seem to be the kind of personality who would enjoy the game, but also most especially understand the game.
Yeah, she does.
And this is not intended as a criticism of
I'm with you
anybody or any type of person in general. It's just her character, as presented, is
simple,
flighty.
She comes across as simple.
Yes, no intellectual capacity. Of any significance there.
Yeah, but she's pretty, so that's why he wants a trophy.
Well,
wants a table lamp.
Yeah.
So Moreland sees. Yeah, exactly. Moreland sees his henchman coming towards him, tells Anna that he will see her at dinner. Seems like he's always shooing her off and saying, "I'll see you at dinner." We must have a lot of dinner, because I don't know that we're in a different day here, but okay. She asks if he will be late again, and he says he hopes not. He turns to the henchman and says that Laura will be someone to contend with, and begins to lay out a plan. Meanwhile, Laura, Mildred, and Applegate arrive at the address. She knocks on the door for once, so that's progress. And when nobody answers, she pulls out her lockpick piece. Mildred asks where she got that.
Yeah,
Are you new? Are you new? They carry them everywhere.
Well, and the other thing is that she says that she stole them from Mr. Steele's pants pocket.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why don't you have your own that you carry with you everywhere?
Question. Quite literally, my next question was, where was hers?
Yeah.
She shouldn't need to steal it from his pants pocket. She's got her own. So, yeah, this seems like a weird detail to have in there. And I guess it's just to show that she was still playing the game or whatever. But it falls flat for me. Laura tells Mildred she lifted it up, like as you said, from his pants pocket while he changed on the yacht. She says it's a dirty trick, and she smiles and says it is. Okay. Once inside, they find a row of computers, typewriters, some kind of electronic devices. I had trouble kind of pinpointing what these were.
Old computer technology. It looks to me like there's what might be considered a mainframe or a mini computer on one side, and then there's a bunch of, I would say, terminals. Okay, I feel a rant coming on.
Batten down the hatches. Here we go.
Back in the early days of computers.
Back in the day. Sorry.
Yeah. You had this big giant computer over in some room somewhere, or, maybe not even in the same city. And you connected to it with terminals. The terminals weren't the computer. They were just the way you communicated with the computer that was over wherever it was. And so you either had to buy these big, powerful computers that cost millions of dollars, or you had to rent time on computers that somebody else owned, and you would access them with these terminals. And that's one of the reasons why personal computers became popular, is because I don't have to buy this big, expensive machine. I don't have to rent time on this big, expensive machine and have set up with these special terminals. And I remember working on terminals briefly in high school, and I think they were called dumb terminals, because they really didn't have any processing power within themselves. So personal computers become popular because they didn't want to have to pay for renting computer time or buying these big, expensive computers. It was so much easier. And now we're back to everything's in the cloud. It's online, and so basically we've gone right back to where we started from, that we wanted to get away from. Yeah.
No, I don't disagree with any of that.
But yeah, these are all, it's all very early computer technology that we're seeing here. Very, very early.
I should add as well that I had a moment the other day where I felt very, very old, because my daughter, we're reading the Beverly Cleary books, so the Ramona books and the Henry Huggins books, and I didn't know this until I looked it up. Beverly Cleary, she lived to be 105. She died somewhat recently at the age of 105. And the Henry Huggins books were published, I think the first one was published in 1950. I did not realize they were quite that old. And as we're reading them, there's a scene where Henry gets $6 or something to do with $6. He's very excited about it. And she says, well, Mommy, that's just $6. And I said, well, I mean, when you think about when the book was written, that would have been quite a bit of money. And she had to do a little report for her class on the book she was reading. And she wrote, back in the day, $6 was a lot of money. And I was just like, okay. Because she said to me she has said to me, Mommy, back in the day when you were young. And I'm like, no. No. Next, you're going to be like, Mommy, when you were alive in the 1900s. Like, we're not doing that. So anyway.
Are you starting to feel old? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am. I did start this by saying I'm too old for this, right? So yeah, there's computer stuff in there.
Yeah.
Mildred asks what this is. Laura admits she isn't sure. She finds a file labeled Benjamin Applegate, one labeled Remington Steele, past cases, and one labeled Laura Holt psychological profile. It's interesting that they've got a file on his past cases, but they're profiling her. So, okay. Applegate wants to see his file, so she hands it to him while she looks at hers. It says she's extremely dedicated, purposeful, and unlikely to accept game format. Find other alternatives. Not wrong. For Applegate, it says he's expendable. He doesn't like seeing that. Ouch.
Yeah.
Not what you want to hear. Not what you want to hear at all. I mean,
No.
Oof. So yeah, Laura picks up a photo of a beautiful dark-haired woman. While Mildred hands her a journal, she reads aloud and says, Shepard closing in on M. Shepard missing a week now. Time running short. Find Shepard to find M. Applegate asks who M is as Laura reads Steele onto something, which is the last entry. Mildred, and again, at this point, she should think, oh crap, he's in danger. But at no point does that get mentioned. So, Mildred says she has goosebumps, and Laura doesn't blame her. She theorizes that Wainwright set all of this in motion to find M, who, judging from the incident on the yacht, doesn't want to be found. And she makes the analogy that it's like a chess match. So, I mean, I guess they're hitting us over the head with the metaphor, having the giant chess pieces. But yeah, it's not great. She picks up a chess piece and kind of goes over the facts of the case out loud. Opening game, Wainwright tricks him into looking for Shepard. Middle game, we point Wainwright toward M and fool M into looking for Applegate. She can't figure out what the end game is, however. I can tell her. It's when the Avengers fight Thanos. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, she asks Mildred if she remembers where Mr. Steele went, and Mildred thinks she does. So finally, they're cluing into the fact that, hey, we might want to find him. Yeah. Laura says they're going to get him, and Applegate decides, this is where I get out. Laura says, well, we need your talent. Applegate isn't interested. He says a living dog is better than a dead lion. I do like that analogy.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that, so I looked it up.
Oh, is it a real? I didn't know if it was a real saying. It's
from Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verse 4. And it says, for to him that is joined to all the living, there is hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. So basically, as long as you're alive, you know, there's a reason to be hopeful, but you know, even if you're just a mere dog, but if you're a lion and you're dead, you're still dead.
Well, here's our Bible study for the day. I didn't know that was an expression, so I just thought it was a cool phrase, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, I knew it was probably something, but I wasn't able to identify it off the top of my head, so I looked it up. And that's what it is, yeah.
And the more you know, right? Mildred points out that he hasn't been paid yet. Applegate says that's true, but he stashed enough money on the yacht to get him back to England. He's expendable. That dude knows that this is where you get out. Because,
yes, right? At least that's smart.
Yeah, he says this is. As he says this story, an explosion can be heard in the distance. They run to the window only to see the yacht in question being blown to bits.
Yeah.
Well, Wainwright said, or I have Wainwright here. It should be Applegate.
Mhm.
Applegate reluctantly says, well, where do we start? Because obviously that little plan of stashing money on the boat, not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
So.
And he was probably supposed to have been on the boat at the time.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
that's probably not. Yeah, that's probably not setting well with him.
No. He probably thinks he's better off with them at least because they know what they're doing, or at least appear to. So we get a scene change. We've got a rope kind of around Steele's neck. He pole vaults over the wall of the estate. I mean, get this man to the Olympics. That's impressive. You know?
Yeah.
He takes the rope off, throws it over the wall to Banks. Banks uses the rope to climb the wall, and soon he's on the other side with Steele. They go through some bushes and peek around a corner where they see a guard watching the entryway. Banks indicates to Steele that he's going to go around, and he sort of disappears. We see the guard hears a sound, begins to walk towards it, and Banks pops out of a closet? It looks like a room of some kind that he sort of... there was a door of some kind, right? So I was confused as to where he was hiding, but... Because he shoves them into there, and they close the door, right? So there's...
I don't know if it's a door to a room or it's just some sort of an weird alcove thing where, I don't know. It's maybe just an architectural detail. I don't know, but yeah.
They do have it is a door though, because they shut the door on him to stash him there. So it's some sort of room.
Well, the guy that the guy who was standing guard was standing inside in front of a door, but then he walks off down, and it's like a arched entryway. But I don't know. I don't think we actually see a door there inside. We just see that Banks pulls him in.
Because if he shoves him in, he's just going to come right back out.
Unless they knock him out.
Yeah,
which I suppose you grab somebody, you ram their head against a stone wall hard enough, like in the movies.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Steele comes around the corner, and then they go over to where the guard is. Steele reaches into his pockets, but notices something's missing. Banks asks what's wrong, and he admits he's lost his lockpick kit. Whoops. Would have been handy. He asks Banks for a pen and begins to pick the lock. Inside, we see Shepherd laying on a bed. He sits up just as Steele and Banks enter. Steele tells him they've come to get him and tell them to get up. Shepherd doesn't look happy to see them. He asks Steele who he is, and Steele tells him that his cousin Michael and he have come to get him. At this point, Banks reaches into the front of his pants because we all know that's the safest place for a gun.
That's right.
If we've learned nothing.
That's where I keep my gun. Oh, never mind. Sorry. You started to go there earlier.
I'm sorry.
I started to go there, so now we're even.
I shouldn't have. Yeah. So Shepherd obviously doesn't recognize him, and Steele turns around. He sees Banks holding the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, we've got a fake mustache and beard being ripped off, and he says, "Allow me to introduce myself, gentlemen, G.W. Wainwright." So once again, we've got an identity flip.
Yeah. I knew Wainwright. Wainwright.
Wainwright, the second Wainwright after we had the Applegate Wainwright and the
Yeah.
And his accent has changed again. So
yeah.
So we get a scene change. We see a guard patrolling as Steele, the real Wainwright, and Shepherd make their way down the stairs to some sort of. Do you know what this is? It's an electrical panel. Like what are they getting him to do here?
That's a good question.
Cool. Okay.
It's it's obviously an electrical device of some sort. I don't know whether it's supposed to be an alarm system or what. I would guess in the context, it's an alarm system that he's disabling would make the most sense. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird looking thing.
It's really weird looking.
Knows?
And it feels like he's just there to kind of boop the buttons while they talk, right? Because
yeah.
So Wainwright hands Shepherd a gun and tells him to keep a lookout. Shepard looks tempted to use it, but Wainwright reminds him that if Moreland catches him now, they're all dead. So he tells him the only way to get out in one piece is to do what he says. Shepard realizes he's right and leaves to go and watch. Steele tells him that if he's going to die, he'd like to know why. Wainwright says that's understandable and admits that they were 2 mercenaries involved in the payroll robbery, Moreland and himself. He says that Moreland panicked, killed 2 guards, stole his share, and left him for dead. Steele correctly guesses that he's been searching for Moreland ever since. Wainwright tells him that he's been looking for him and that he's afraid of him. He says that ever since he made his first million, he's had soldiers of fortune like Shepard scouring the world for him. Steele correctly assumes that when Shepard disappeared, it meant he got close to Moreland. Wainwright admits that he got Steele to track him down and that he was never more than 1 step behind. Whatever he's doing to the panel, Steele finishes. Wainwright is pleased, says he's gotten his money's worth from Remington Steele investigation, so I wonder if he'd give him a reference. That'd be nice. Just a thought,
Yeah.
Steele asks if he gets a weapon. Wainwright says no and adds that his research indicates that he's a man of principle. He tells him that despite his warning about Moreland, he might be reckless enough to spoil his plans.
My question is, his research into Remington Steele, is it the Remington Steele before Remington Steele showed up?
It's got to be.
The Remington Steele after he showed up, or both?
Well, I assume it's a bit of both, but the Remington Steele before he showed up, Laura had positioned him as this saintly paragon almost, right? And even after he showed up, by and large, they've solved all the cases they've been hired to solve. And if there has been shady, underhanded stuff that they've done, they've kind of managed to keep it under wraps. So for all the public is aware, he is this great principled detective. Theoretically.
Yeah. Okay.
And here's the thing. I do think he's a man of principle, but he's got his own set of principles.
Yeah.
They don't always align with, things like the law. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There's that. He asks if they should continue. Steele says yes. Meanwhile, Laura, Applegate, and Mildred are heading towards the compound in a boat, with Applegate whining incessantly as they go. My God, he's worse than it. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Shoot him. Push him overboard. You don't need him. Laura shushes him and asks Mildred if she heard something. Mildred says no. Laura asks if she's sure. Mildred is sure, but Laura's not relieved, and with good reason, as a light suddenly turns on right behind them. A boat heads toward them, men standing on deck with machine guns. Applegate turns into a blubbering mess, repeating, "We're dead, we're dead, we're dead, we're dead," over and over. Laura says, "This is where we need you." And, I guess a thespian is always ready to perform, because a moment later...
And probably the ones who are most eager to perform are the hams.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's ready to chew the scenery any chance he can. So he stands up, assumes once again his public school accent, and tells them his name is Worthy Cunningham, and claims they're on vacation in the islands and having a frightfully bad time with the navigation equipment. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, really bad. It obviously doesn't work, but he gives it his best shot at least, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
We see them all being led into Moreland's office. Applegate says he thought his act was working until he got port and starboard mixed up. I get those mixed up all the time. I don't know why we need to give the boat new names. Why can't we just say the back and the front? Why?
I don't know.
Port, starboard.
I guessed universality.
Back and front is pretty universal. Front's the front, back's the back.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I had something similar happen to me when I was in college. I had an instructor that was trying to teach me. He was actually teaching the class. And one of the things we were supposed to be studying was sight singing. And, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And, I was asking, well, why do we have to learn this? I mean, why not just say 1, 5, 3, whatever, just the numbers of them.
Yeah.
And he he either couldn't give me an answer or wouldn't give me an answer, which was probably the wrong thing for him to do as far as
that's fair.
me. When you tell me I've got to do something, and then when I ask why, because I don't understand why, and you refuse to give me an answer for whatever reason it is, that no, that doesn't go over well with me. Now, years later, I kind of finally realized it is because do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, those are recognized throughout the world pretty much. So I don't have to speak your language. You don't have to speak his language. You don't have to speak her language, and she doesn't have to speak my language, but we can all communicate with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So I guess in this sense, everybody's aft, starboard, port, no, let's say aft. Yeah, that thing.
We can all get confused together. That's what
yeah, that's right. So everybody knows that port is port and starboard, and it doesn't matter what language you speak. If you say port, you always know it's to the left. So anyway.
But again, to throw in another Lethal Weapon reference, this reminds me of the scene where they're in the boat and Leo.
At least no Buffy references.
It's not
anyway,
yet,
so
yeah,
you were saying?
Yeah, Leo is confused with aft and starboard, and then the nearly gets bit by a shark. So, yeah.
And at that point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Moreland asks Laura what he's going to do with them. Laura tells him that if his name starts with an M, that Wainwright wasn't killed on his yacht, and he's probably somewhere close by now. Moreland finds it odd that she should warn him when she helped to track him down. Mildred demands to know what the deal with Wainwright is and why he wants to kill him. Impressive, because Mildred doesn't really have any leverage here, so Mildred's ballsy. I love Mildred. She's just kind of they're not in any way able to make demands for any information, but she's just like, I want to know what's going on here. I'm going to ask my questions. So good for her. Moreland corrects them, saying that he's the killer and he's the one who needs to be stopped. Laura says she got the impression he feels the same way about him. Laura says that they're here to help and that the least he can do is tell her what's going on. Moreland says, like all enemies, they began as the best of friends. I'd say not all enemies begin as the best of friends, but okay.
Yeah.
Again, the chess reference, chess partners in the African jungle and mercenaries in the same unit. Laura asks which war, and he says, if it matters, adding that it was all corrupt. Again, at this point, the writers could give us one, but I guess maybe they just don't care.
Well, also it keeps it somewhat generic so that
yeah, fair enough.
Nobody can pin them down on anything and say, well, you got the wrong war, or, well, that wouldn't have happened in this particular war, or
true.
Yeah,
they don't have to worry about historical accuracy.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting because he at this point we get these two characters that I'm trying to. You spend the next what's left of the episode watching it, wondering which one is more evil. And it feels like with every scene switch, one ups the other. And they're both villains. They're both bad guys. But, like, my God, you're not sure. Because it seems here that he's being semi-reasonable when he gives his story. He says, we were chess partners. It was corrupt. They stole the army payroll, but he claimed it was Wainwright who shot the two guards, causing them to have a battalion on their tail. He says to make matters worse, he brought a South African girl with him. Laura asks if that was his girlfriend. Moreland says he claimed he was going to marry her, but that they were ambushed and she was killed. So if we believe this, oh my gosh, big flip. Wainwright's really the bad guy, not Moreland. Right? And it just keeps flipping us back and forth, which would work for me if this were earlier in the episode and we had more to go on other than this is being tacked on at the end and we're just kind of like getting whiplash over he's evil. No, he's evil. No, he's evil. No, he's evil. Like, okay, they're both bad.
Yeah. I mean, after a certain point, it doesn't matter who's the most evil.
Right.
They're both evil. But, the other thing is, and maybe this is only apparent in retrospect, is that here he says, we were ambushed and she was killed. He doesn't say that the people who ambushed them killed her.
No.
And, one of my things has always been listen to what people actually say,
Mm-hmm.
not what you think they said.
Yeah.
Because, people have this habit of, well, they give me a response, and I think that's an answer to a question, but it really wasn't a response. It doesn't really give me details. And when they say things that don't provide specific details, maybe it's because they want you to infer certain things that they're not actually saying, so that they later on can say, I didn't say that.
I said she was killed. I didn't say who killed her.
Yeah, and I guess it's retrospect because I know what the episode is and how it winds up being. But yeah, that line of "we were ambushed and she was killed" just is kind of like one of those. That's pretty non-specific.
Yeah. And Moreland then adds that they barely escaped. Wainwright blamed him for her death and swore revenge as soon as they fought their way out. Moreland says that he should have killed him right there, but instead he took his share of the money and escaped.
Now, the fact that he said, I should have killed him right there. Okay. So now everything is questionable because he blamed you for his girlfriend's death. You should have killed him.
Yeah. Like that's the automatic.
Wait, how do we get to there?
That's the go-to response, right? Well, you blamed me. It's an unfair thing, so I should have killed him. I should. Yeah.
You didn't give me a Dr. Pepper. You got me a Coke. Well, I should have just killed you.
I mean, to be fair, that's an offense. So, anyway, yeah. So they look doubtful, rightfully so, because he says, "Well, I should have killed him, but instead I just took my share of the money." Moreland says that he knows they don't believe that he would do that, but he feels that they both deserved a fair stake. Laura says fate played a funny hand, just as the redhead, or I have the redhead here because I forgot her name midway through the episode because she was that boring. I legitimately forgot her name and forgot to fill it back in when I was making my notes. Anna walks back in. But honestly, she could just be the redhead because they say her name once and that's kind of, or twice. They say it twice. She sees Laura and the
cutout.
Yeah. She sees Laura and the others and says, "Oh, sorry, Colonel, I did not." And then Moreland, clearly caught, says, "It's nothing, my dear." One of his guards then runs up and tells them the alarm system is out, so I guess that was what they were doing. And the prisoner has escaped. Before Moreland can reply, the lights go out. Moreland tells him not to panic and assures him the emergency generator will come on. It does, but then we hear a gunshot. He orders his guard, Paolo, to get her out of there and grabs a gun, saying he has no intention of letting Wainwright stalk him. He then grabs Laura, adding, "Not without a shield." I mean, if you were trying to make your case...
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not helping.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to use somebody as a human shield, but I'm a really nice person.
Honestly, I'm decent. I totally should have killed him back then, but now that I didn't, I'm going to use you as a human shield.
Yeah. And don't criticize me for that. I mean, it's only reasonable, right?
Yeah, of course. And he adds that he always had a soft spot for women. Mildred protests that he can't do that, which, I mean, he can, right? As he drags Laura away and he turns to Applegate asking, and she turns to Applegate saying, "How can you let him do that?" And Applegate says, "I don't do reality, darling." Which I love. That's love a good line,
yeah.
It's great.
I don't do reality.
So yeah, we get a scene switch. They're walking through the bushes outside. Steele, Shepard, and Wainwright. They hear a gunshot. Wainwright tells Shepard to check it out. He does. We get 2 more shots. They wait a minute. Steele asks if they're going to help him, and Wainwright gestures and says they're going the other way. Meanwhile, we see Laura, Moreland, and Paolo coming down a set of stairs. Moreland gestures to the guard to check it out, then stops, saying, with any luck, Wainwright's already dead. Another gunshot can be heard. Are they shooting into the night? Like, who's shooting these guns?
I'm guessing that they were shooting at Shepard.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, because he did go out there with his gun, but...
Or Shepard is shooting at... Or they're shooting... Shepard and the guards are shooting at each other, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
Because he's the only person that we really don't see at this point, so he's got to be the one that's involved in the shooting.
Right.
So, somehow.
Anyway, Laura uses this moment to shove Moreland over and make a run for it. She does so along the wall with men... As the men with machine guns shoot at her, they miss her. Back with Steele and Wainwright, Wainwright tells Steele he has one final job for him. He tells him to stand up and draw his fire by running that way, gestures in front of him. Steele looks at him like he's crazy, but Wainwright isn't kidding. He tells Steele he's done an excellent job so far and not to tarnish his reputation, which I don't really think Steele cares about at this point, but yeah, he says he can only hope to return the favor sometime.
Yeah.
Wainwright says go and hope he gets lucky. Steele makes the same run for it along the same wall, and again the machine guns fire. They're worse than stormtroopers. How does not one of them hit? Not that I want to see them shot, but like, I get that it's a moving target, but you've got machine guns.
Well, yeah. Machine guns are not, they're notoriously not accurate. Because every time when you shoot a round from a gun, the pressure of the gases exploding, pushing the bullet out, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Mm-hmm. Well, it's pushing the bullet out, but it's also kicking that gun back up. Now, if you're doing a handgun, then between shots, you have time to bring it down and re-aim at your target. But with a machine gun, it's firing rounds quickly enough that you don't have time to do that. So it's jumping around all over. It's really going to be most beneficial for just throwing a bunch of bullets into an area in general, just to keep people's heads down. So, it's like picking up a handful of gravel and throwing it. You might actually hit something, but it's not the idea of hitting something is kind of secondary. It's more about just putting enough lead out there to get people to keep their head down. So machine guns are really, really, they're terribly misrepresented in the media.
Are you saying Hollywood lied to me?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That can't be. That can't be. Oh. That can't be.
Yes.
I refuse to acknowledge that.
No.
Anyway.
Yeah. So machine guns are horribly misrepresented. They are very inaccurate in the way that they are presented. And it's more of just like I said, a handful of gravel, you throw it at something, and if it hits something, great, but that's not the purpose. So anyway.
We see Laura running out of the darkness. She's got a big stick. She grabs it. She nearly hits him over the head with it as he comes from the other direction. The reunion is short-lived, however, as they're still being chased. They run through the bushes onto the giant chessboard. The men catch up with them and begin shooting, and almost hit Steele, who uses the chess piece as a shield. If the piece is made out of wood, mm-hmm. I don't know if it would make the greatest shield, would it?
Well, it's not solid. It's just like a box construction. Yeah. It would be an okay shield because once that bullet hits the front side of it, it's going to do at least one of two things, possibly both. It's going to change the shape of the bullet because as it impacts it, it's going to flatten it, which is going to affect its ability to punch through because it's not a sharp pointed. I say sharp pointed, but I mean, it doesn't have a good pointed tip on it anymore. And then also it's going to reduce its speed, its force, because some of that's absorbed by trying to punch through that first layer of plywood or whatever it is. So it doesn't have as much power or ability to punch through that second layer of plywood on the backside of it because it's been slowed down, it's been misshapen, so it's not concentrating its force on a much finer point. It's more spread out. It's like the laying on a bed of nails things. It's not all the weight on one nail. It's all the weight spread out amongst all of the nails. And then the other thing is that when it hits that, because these pieces, these walls on these chess pieces are not perfectly vertical, they're at an angle. As it hits that, it's likely to change the direction of travel of the bullet as it's passing through from the front panel to the back panel, which is also that's going to reduce the amount of force that it has because of that change in angle. So it's possible that it would work as a shield. It's probably not the best choice of things,
Well, that you work with what you've got.
given the possibility of other things, but given what's available, it's probably better than nothing.
I'm going to start calling these segments Eric Explains Guns to the Canadian, because literally I've noticed that every single question with regards to guns, I'm like, I don't know how this works, because I'm Canadian. We don't. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I do have some experience with them because I did spend 6 years in the Air National Guard, and I worked.
And that's why I'm
full time for this military department for the state for 4 years. So
I'm deferring to you because that's what I don't know. I go by what Hollywood tells me. Hollywood
that's
tells
absolutely
me,
true.
Hollywood tells me that it's totally safe to stick a gun down your pants, and that if you shoot a machine gun, you can just hit somebody super, super easy. It's fine.
Yes.
So,
and Hollywood also tells me that there's aliens out there that have little things that come out of their mouth and go,
You've never been abducted by aliens? Anyway, so he throws the chess piece at the men, knocking one over. He and Laura scatter. The other man continues to shoot as Laura and Steele duck behind various chess pieces. He advances on them, still shooting, as Steele shoves another piece at him. It misses, but Laura manages to hit him over the head with a stick that she picked up. Moreland catches up to them, starts weaving through the chess pieces with his gun drawn. Laura sees him and throws the stick to Mr. Steele, who watches him behind a chess piece. He throws his arm over the top of the piece, which causes Moreland to turn. I gotta wonder if he was trying to hit him or if this was the only angle he had, but Laura uses the distraction and shoves the piece over on top of him.
Which I think is a little bit questionable. I mean, that
silly.
would be kind of a tough thing to do. It's,
Yeah. And I mean, Steele says checkmate, and Moreland doesn't move, which leads you to think he's unconscious, but he's not, because he shows up later. So is he just laying there chilling out? Like, okay.
Temporarily amnesia. No, temporarily knocked out. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. We hear more gunfire behind them. They turn to see Mildred and Applegate running towards them, with Applegate firing a machine gun in the air.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, that's not unsafe.
Yeah, well, especially since he says, how do you get these things to stop?
Yeah. Well, there's that whole saying, what goes up must come down.
Right? Like, I know that much. I'm not that much of an idiot. Like, I don't know why you would
you'd be surprised how many people don't think about that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to fire a shot in the air. Well, where's it going to come down? What's it going to hit when it comes down?
I mean, it might not be going as fast, but depending on how high it goes, like...
Well, it could go fairly high.
That's
they've got a lot of force behind them. They leave the gun... Some rounds will leave the gun at supersonic speeds. Yeah, so they've got a lot of speed behind them, which means that they're going to go quite a ways up. And then there's something when it's coming down called terminal velocity. It doesn't matter how heavy something is necessarily. It's going to continue to speed up to a certain point that's fairly fast. Yeah. It's like dropping a rubber ball off the top of a building. By the time it gets down and hits you on the head, that's going to hurt. So, yeah. And they gave the guy who's a confirmed coward, he somehow got a hold of a gun. So. Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's not great. I mean, Mildred, I would trust Mildred more with the gun. At least she's not going to fire it randomly into the air to. Yeah. So Steele says they're now only missing one person, Wainwright. Laura kneels down and picks up Moreland's gun, suddenly realizing something. She exclaims, "Queen's Gambit, of course." She turns to go somewhere. Steele stops her, asking for an explanation for those not fluent in chess. Laura tells him that a gambit is a ploy used to set up a surprise attack, or it's one of the X-Men. That's just... Sorry. Laura says Wainwright could have killed the colonel, but he didn't. Instead, he used the confusion to go after his woman. Steele asks why they are standing there talking and urges Laura to go. Inside the compound...
My comment is... Why are we still standing here talking? Because you insisted on it, Mr. Steele.
You asked her. Yeah, that's a good point. Inside the compound, we see Wainwright with a garrote in his hand, hunting for Anna, or the woman, as I've put here, because I, again, had forgotten her name when I was writing these notes out. Literally, my notes, I could say Anna, but it's more fun to read my notes as is, because like I said, I'd forgotten her name temporarily. I said, Moreland's redhead is hiding under a staircase as he climbs the stairs. He reaches the top of the winding staircase and changes his mind, comes back down, and goes into a small room. Inside the room, he sees a figure huddled by the window, hiding underneath a shawl that the woman was wearing. Thinking he has found his prey, he approaches the figure. The figure, however, is Laura. She stands up before he can get to her and points the gun at him. Steele appears behind with a gun to his back. The woman, Anna, rushes up to Laura and thanks her, and Wainwright says his only mistake was hiring detectives that are too good. Which, again, okay, here now we've got somebody who's even more evil, because no matter what Moreland did to him, his retaliation is to kill an innocent simpleton, like sorry, an innocent woman. She had nothing to do with this, so you're going to get back at him by going after this woman who is that's pretty awful.
Yeah, well, I mean, for some people, that's called poetic justice. You
Sure,
killed my woman, I'll kill your woman.
Also called being a psycho. Steele tells him he doesn't understand. He thought he was after Moreland. Wainwright says he was, but after Shepard told him Moreland was getting married, his plans changed. He says that Fortune was giving him the chance to do to Moreland what he had done to him. You steal my toy, I steal yours. Or in this case, I'm going to kill your... Yeah.
Kill your woman.
Laura supplies that he blames Moreland for the death of the woman he loved. Wainwright says he killed her by neglect. This is the funniest part. He doesn't even know at this point that Moreland murdered her. He thinks it was an accident, but he's still pissed off enough to kill an innocent woman.
He does, but it's not that he necessarily thinks it was just a total random accident. He viewed it as being
careless.
Well, I would say a little more sinister than that. Irresponsible. Careless and irresponsible are kind of different degrees of the same thing, and I'll admit that. But irresponsible is more of a willful act, whereas careless is I wasn't thinking. I think in his mind it was a matter of, I don't care if she gets killed because it suits my purpose, so I'm just not going to be that concerned about it. If she does, I'm not going to go out of my way to try and protect her. And I think it was more that he viewed it as being irresponsible.
Yeah, well, for sure, but that's my point. Like, he doesn't know that he actually murdered her, and he's still willing to kill this innocent woman because okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, in his mind, there's no difference. So, what's that one extra step? Okay, sure, he finds out he actually did murder her intentionally, but in his mind, being irresponsible enough to let her be killed, even if he didn't do it himself, that's far enough over the line it's far enough over the line that he now feels justified in doing back to him.
Yeah. Ethics.
Yeah.
So, just then we see Moreland approach from behind with a gun. They should have at least tied the man up. My God, they just walked away. Moreland tells him he's living in the past and that his problem was always that he was too sentimental. Yeah, that's his problem.
Yeah.
These men are sociopaths, but you're too sentimental. You care too much. Yikes. Okay.
Hey, whatever justification you can use to explain away and convince people that you're just a victim here.
Yeah. He tells them to drop their guns. They do. He says, "You honestly thought killing Anna would affect me the way you were destroyed when Kathleen was killed? Ouch. Guess the honeymoon's over." Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure the honeymoon ever began.
Yeah, he calls him a poor, misguided fellow and reminds him that emotion should never be overruled by judgment. That doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to say that judgment should overrule emotion. Like, judgment is the thing you want to have. You want to have judgment. You don't want to be ruled by your emotions. It's an odd line because
it is. But
emotion should never overrule judgment, should be the line.
Yeah. But I think it's He's telling him that what he did was unemotional and was good judgment. He's talking about what he did. He's talking about himself.
Oh, okay.
And he's suggesting that Wainwright was letting his emotions overrule his judgment.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm too intelligent for that. Good judgment says we get rid of her and then, she's not a problem for us anymore. She's not going to drag us down. So yeah, I just did the most rational thing that I could without any interference from emotion. I put a bullet in her brain. So
well, he hasn't gotten that far yet. Like Wainwright the penny hasn't dropped for Wainwright quite yet.
Right, but this is part of his
for sure.
Explaining it to Wainwright as to why Wainwright is such a emotional fool.
Yeah.
And Moreland, I'm so much better than you because I'm totally rational. I have no emotions about anything.
Yeah, so do psychopaths. And it's interesting, though, that he says this because Laura is always afraid that her judgment is clouded by emotion. So this is not what you want to aspire to, just FYI.
Yeah.
This is where he tells him that I told you dragging a woman hundreds of miles through the jungle was utter folly. They would never have made it. That's when the penny drops.
Mm-hmm.
Wainwright realizes that he actually killed her intentionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moreland says it had to be done, but at least he left him his share of the money. What a humanitarian.
Well, yeah,
right?
That makes it fine.
Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah.
Infuriated, Wainwright lunges at Moreland. Moreland shoots the gun at Wainwright, but not before he tackles him, and they both fall out the window to their deaths.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, is really the only way you could end this episode because, you've written yourself into a corner with these guys both having guns and just back and forth.
Yeah.
Steele, Anna, and Laura look through the window, and Steele comments the game is over. So that's it. That's all she wrote. We get a switch to the final scene. Laura and Steele enjoying a gondola ride in the most cliche outfits on the planet. Laura looks like this is the most hideous white dress I've ever seen. Hey, Laura, the 1800s called. They want all of that back.
Okay. Well, what did you think of that white dress that Anna was wearing?
Also hideous, but I mean, I'm Laura's our main character, right? So come on, you had that beautiful gold crop top thing going on, and now you look like I don't know. You look like you're waiting for your horse and buggy to come pick you up. It's not working for me. You like it, don't you? You like the dress. I knew it.
I don't know what it is, but white. I guess what do you call them? Summer dresses or sundresses or whatever that. Yeah, I like them.
It could, but it's all the way up to the like. If it had been like a spaghetti strap or something that's like a little more. This just looks like way too much fabric. She looks like she's in the Puritan times. Like I like a school marm.
Fine. Yeah. I will not defend my statement. I'm just going to say, I'm right and you're wrong.
We'll see. We'll see what the fans have to say.
Oh, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say you're absolutely right and I'm wrong. But hey,
I do enjoy that. Anyway. Laura's they're sort of just sitting lazy. I'm not fond of Steele's outfit either. I'm gonna say he looks like something out of the postcard, right? He looks silly too. But anyway, so they're both laying there. Laura says she's finally starting to enjoy laziness. Steele's preoccupied. He says he wishes he could have done something more. Laura agrees and says at least they saved Anna and Shepard too. Steele acknowledges that there was no way they could have stopped Wainwright and Moreland from destroying each other. Laura says he's right. They would have gotten to the bottom of the case a lot sooner if they hadn't split up. True. Steele agrees. And she says that they're a team and teams stick together. He agrees. All for one and one for all. And then he can't resist it. He just can't help one last dig as he says, so what if I have more expertise? We're partners. I'm sorry. What? Huh? What? Oh, sorry. She said that. My bad. Reading the notes wrong. Yeah, she can't resist one last dig. She says, so what if I have one more? Steele says, who cares if I have the superior skills? Happy to lend them to the common goal. Like they just can't. The two of them. I'm putting the two of them in timeout here because they both can't just let it go. Right.
Well, the thing is, you're right. They're using this as a way of, poking the bear, so to speak. They just got to get those digs in. But the fact is, if they would just stop that, they would recognize that, that's what makes them a good team. It's like in a household, you've got different chores that people do. And it's, and I don't want to offend anybody here, but if somebody says, well, this woman is doing, in this couple, she's doing these chores and then he's doing these things, people get all bent out. Well, you're just saying that she's doing that because that's woman's work. No, it's because maybe she's better at that than this, other half is. And this other half is better at these certain things than that one is. Don't fight it. Don't criticize each other because, you're doing a traditional role model. Well, maybe not. But if that's what these two different people bring to the mix, and this person is strong at this thing and this person is strong at the other thing, utilize that. To benefit everybody. Don't argue about it. Don't use it as a means of beating up on the other person.
And
you're
with
just saying that because.
With that analogy, I would also say that the only time that I would have an issue with seeing those specific roles being played out in a household is if they weren't chosen. Right? If you have a woman who's constantly irritated because her husband never does anything around the house, she's the one doing it all, then sure. Mm-hmm. But if you've decided, okay, you're a good cook, you're a terrible cook, I'll do the cooking. Like with us, with my husband and I, most of what we have in the house is split up because that's just how but I do the dishes because I like having dishes clean all the time. I don't like having anything sitting in the sink. It drives me crazy. So I do the dishes. We take turns cooking though, and he does all the vacuuming. He does the cat litter. It's split but it's choice, right? So if any, and in this case, I would even argue she has more expertise. She's right about that in terms of her education. Mm-hmm. He tries to say he has superior skills, but I don't think they're superior. I think they're different. He has different skills that have their advantages in different settings, which, as you're saying, makes sense. Because there's certain particular settings where his skills come in more handy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was gonna jump on that word different, but you got to it before I did.
Yeah,
because her experience, they're coming at a common goal from two different directions.
Yeah,
he is a I'll say reformed criminal.
Yeah,
okay, reformed con man. So he understands their cases from that perspective and that psychology. She's coming at it from the other direction.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that one is necessarily better than the other.
No, it just means
universally. There's going to be times when one is better than the other, but it's not a universal.
No.
They're just different. They're approaching the same problems from two different directions, and that gives them a wider basis for analyzing circumstances and taking things into account that they wouldn't have otherwise, because I'm approaching it from this side and you're bringing something up that I wouldn't have thought of because that's not where I'm coming from.
They bring something different to the table, and they're both too stubborn in this particular moment to admit it. Because he says superior skills, and she sits up and echoes superior skills, and then he says, what's mine is yours. And she says, wait a minute, who cracked this case? He laughs and says, oh, come now, Laura, don't quibble. I'm not going to lord it over you that I found Shepard first. She laughs and says, under the circumstances, you don't think that proves anything, do you? And as they're bickering, the camera's slowly panning back from the gondola into a wide shot. Steele has one more response, can't make it out, but it's exhausting at this point because he did find Shepard first, but also she figured out the case was not even a case first. So you could argue that till you're dizzy, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Just shut up. And that's when the camera freezes. So okay, I didn't hate this episode. It just feels like there wasn't a lot of fun in it. And I miss that. I miss getting the bantery. Like, there's a few moments where he's getting her arrested and she's spearing his boat. But like, for the most part,
I thought that overall the general plot was pretty good.
The plot was decent enough, sure.
You know, the double crossing, the double and triple identities, and all of this stuff, that was good. But the characterizations, that would be the part where it fell down. But in terms of the actual plot, if they had written the characters different, if they had come up with a different reason for them to separate and take it on differently, like they did in
they've done it a few times where it's worked.
The one you were talking,
the Maury Singer one,
no, the college one.
Steel Crazy,
Steel Crazy, yes. It was the Maury Singer one, because they created a situation where they were each investigating it separately, but there was a basis for that was not a matter of a personal conflict at the basis of it. It was a matter of Singer went to Steele,
and Laura was hired,
and he didn't, and Singer didn't want Laura involved, and the jewelry store owner went to Laura, but she didn't want, but the jewelry store owner didn't want Steele involved. And so this was not a conflict between Steele and Laura. It was a circumstance presented to them by the people that had hired them. Whereas, in this one, it's personal animosity.
Yeah. And it just feels like we're going in circles with the bickering and I just want to separate them and maybe it's the parent of an 8-year-old in me, but I'm just like, I'm over it. I get it. They're both. Anyway,
you go to your room and you go to your room.
It's not an episode I would avoid, but it's not one that I usually remember exists, if that makes sense. So it's kind of in that weird middle of the road range. So anyway, on the website, www.SteeleWatching.com, we've got show notes, links to Amazon US, Amazon Canada. We've got merch links, and we've also got ways that you can subscribe. So if you want to hear more Good Cop, Bad Cop, hear more of Eric's fashion choices, by all means, please become a subscriber and you'll get lots more of that, and maybe more than you want to. So we've also got other social media resources and links, such as
the link to the official Twitter and Instagram pages and the Steel Watchers fan group, where we get together and beat up on my fashion sense.
Yeah, we do.
I'm just going to get roasted for this one.
Baseball pants, sundresses, and sweaters. That best describes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can I say? I enjoy the classics.
And our next episode will be Cast in Steel. So
yes, we
get a recurring character popping up in that one. So
a recurring character first coming up, and also some
first
big
appearance.
name Hollywood names showing up in a little more than cameos. Actually, they're not even actually cameos. They are somewhat central to the episode, so that's kind of an interesting thing. Usually on TV shows when they have some big Hollywood name actor show up, it's just like they're walking through a scene.
There's like, oh look, there's so and so.
But no, this is I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. I don't have a and again, it's been a while since I've watched it, but I have a favorable impression that I like this episode. So I don't think it's going to be too much. You don't dislike it. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be too much bad cop with this one. So apologize for anybody we may have put off with this episode. But I don't hate it. I just don't love it.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got nothing else.
I got nothing else either. So, all right. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Eric and Sara here. Just a quick announcement to let you know that, yes, we do appreciate everyone who listens, participates, and supports the podcast in whatever way you do. But we wanted to give an extra thank you to those who are so graciously giving to be monthly financial supporters.
We are making live streams of our recording sessions available to anyone who is a monthly financial supporter. So not only can you watch us live as we record our podcast episodes, you will be getting access to the raw, behind-the-scenes, unedited version of episodes before they get officially released.
And Sarah, does that include our mistakes and screw-ups and our humiliating?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Every
it does.
single one of them.
Every single one of them, yes. So again, this is just an extra thank you to those who are going above and beyond. But whether you choose to become a monthly financial supporter or not, we still love you. We want to say we thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your feedback.
If you want to become a monthly financial supporter, please visit our website at www.SteeleWatching.com to sign up.